Has it come up yet, Dave?
Yes, it came up. I'm going to start in a second too here.
Right. Welcome to another episode of Subconscious Realms. I'm your host, General Lee. And for tonight's Swapcast, we are joined by the host and creator of MetaMindcast, Sir Robby Marx. Now then, Robby.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. We're also joined by the host and creator of a YouTube channel, Dave Petrella. Now then, Dave.
Hey guys, yeah, nice to have me, General. Appreciate it, Robby. Nice to talk to you again.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to speaking with you, especially after Robby spoke of you with the highest regards back end of last week, mate. So if Robby recommends somebody, then
Wow, great guys. Yeah.
Say no more.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
That's what we need. Especially when we've got like new content, new material. It just makes it that much more exciting. Because when things come by word of mouth, somebody of Robby's caliber,
Oh, yeah, totally. And I've been doing this for a long time too.
So before we get into the meat, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please, Dave?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, I started my study in biology when I was young, probably about 10 years old. And, I was reading the medical texts when I was really young. And I was sitting there in my 5th grade class, and the teachers were teaching anatomy. And I said, oh, yeah, what's this structure? What's this structure? And actually, they didn't even know because, they're not teaching at that level. So I just said, I'm going to start doing it myself. And I just, picked up the anatomy textbooks, and I really got really dug into that really deep. And then I studied biology primarily through kind of secondary school, through high school and everything. And took, advanced courses. I took college courses when I was in high school and everything. So I've always been really, really focused on the biology aspects. And then sometime after college, I said, all right, I've had enough of the Western, kind of how the Western hemisphere teaches it. Let's go over to the Eastern side. And I started to focus actually on the chakra system, which is, the yogic principles of yoga, the 7 colored chakras that go up the spine. And of course, I wondered why they never touched on that when I learned biology in the West. It's very specific to kind of your location when you're being taught. So, of course, I didn't have enough, and I wanted to see what they said. And I always do that. I always go to as many cultures as I can to try to see the different perspectives, So I started in with that, and that was probably 2011. I started with the Eastern traditions. And then it kind of expanded to principles of Ayurvedic medicine, principles of Chinese medicine, and it got into a lot of the esoteric realm because you can't go into that stuff without touching on that. So I picked that up along the way too. And then 2015, I actually started with astrology. I found my good friend now, Santos Bonacci. He's got a prolific YouTube channel himself. It's called Mr. Astrotheology, if people want to check that out. He's a wonderful teacher. Mr. Astrotheology, one word. So, he's a wonderful teacher, man. And he's a really good astrologer. He talks a lot about flat Earth, personal sovereignty in terms of, we kind of rule ourselves as humans, as opposed to governments ruling us. And he's out there very active. He started his own school online and everything. So the Syncretism Society, I think Syncretism Academy. So he's doing really great work. But anyway, I was looking for information about the body again, about actually the spinal cord fluid, because it's supposed to be the conduit for the spirit in the physical body, essentially. It's a very esoteric concept. I looked that up. I found a video by Santos. I literally fell off my chair. I could not believe what I was seeing and hearing. And the fact that I went through all of this time and I never was presented with this concept. And, if I was presented with this concept when I was 18, I would have saved 15 years of my life in terms of like trying to pull at straws, figuring out, where is the information I'm looking for? So one of the things I'm trying to do is to get it into one place so that people don't have to struggle like I did. Let's get it very important to me to get it clear, very clear and concise. I'm always ready for questions. I'm always ready to figure things out if I don't yet understand it. So I'm doing a lot of that work, and I'm making it easier for people because it's not easy to get into this stuff. The last part, well, there's two more parts. The second to last part here, I watched a video. Actually, it was uploaded by Santos Bonacci, who at the time I had not heard of. And then I saw on the side where it says the recommended playlists and everything, recommended videos. He had a bunch of videos about astrology. And I never looked into astrology enough. And something told me, Dave, now is the time to do this. This is something you have to do. I did not want to do it. I'll be honest with you guys. I did not want to do it. It was something that was given to me as a responsibility. And it's still a really big responsibility to teach it clearly and correctly. This is tropical astrology, which got kicked off in Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. It's essentially it's astrology of the West. It's called Western astrology or tropical astrology. And then you got the Vedic astrology, which is based out of India, which developed essentially separately. And it's they're both valid. If people are wondering, both valid systems. Yeah. So now, I learned.
I've heard tropical and sidereal as the terms. For those. And I didn't know that the sidereal went back to, what did you say, the Vedas?
Oh yeah, sidereal is actually the same as Vedic, Robbie. It's also called Jyotish or Jyotisha. It's all the same for the Vedic. It's on the India side.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead though.
Yeah, so I picked up the astrology component, and I did it as a science because I'm a scientist. That's how I do things. If I can't repeat it, and if I can't go to scientific method, then I don't hang my hat on it. I always keep it in the back of my head. But for me to be able to promote something and say, yeah, this is how it works, guys, I need to be able to repeat it over and over because that's good science. And it really came through with a golden light for me because I was able to do that actually after a very short period of time. And I said, you know what? I don't really know what I feel about this, but it doesn't matter because it's correct. And if it's correct, I have to go with it. Good science it's not my opinion. It's about how the system works. I want to understand how the earth works.
Right.
So it's not an easy thing to do to be able to separate what you want from how things actually go. So anyway, picked up astrology, and it's before I even really talked about it. I mean, I put in a good 2.5 years before I was getting decent at it. Let me put it that way. It takes a long time. You've got to go to the field. You've got to be comfortable with what you're doing, and make sure you're getting positive reinforcement, getting good data back. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go for it, guys. Yep.
No, I could say I can imagine it would be challenging. Would be an understatement to be challenging.
Right. I mean, I think with the whole astrological understanding, a component of visualization is necessary, just to be able to understand these cycles within cycles and how these different planets interrelate with one another. And that comes down to numeric systems and angles and arcs, and it's quite the intensive process to understand a lot of how astrology functions.
Yeah, that's right, Robbie. I mean, it's actually, you're right. It's all mathematics. It's actually, I say I'm an astrologer. I could also just say I'm a mathematician. It's the same thing. It's actually the same thing. We just need to get a little bit more mature and, to get, and I understand it hasn't been taught very well. A lot of people who pick up onto it do it because they see it as a fad or something fun, or they want to be like counterculture. It is not that way at all. It was taught as a science in ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia and many other parts of the world. So, but if you don't give it time, you never get to that point. So I feel very, very honored that I've been given the responsibility to teach Western astrology correctly. It's a lot to take on, but I feel very confident, very good about it as it stands now. And the only other thing I want to add to this, guys, and then definitely let's open it up, is starting in probably 2015. It was actually the same year. It was a little bit later. I think it was the summer of 2015. I actually started to key into the television show. It's called The Curse of Oak Island. It's a very popular show across.
Yes, it's Oak Island, yeah.
Yeah, across most of the world. So most people know.
I just saw a book from, I think it was 1926, that was about Oak Island. And I mean, John Wayne, I mean, he dumped like thousands and thousands of dollars into that place. It's been a long-standing kind of treasure site, you know.
Oh, totally. Yeah, John Wayne was on.
Have they found anything yet, or is it just all?
You say, have they found it, General?
Have they actually found anything yet? Yeah, I know that there's maybe some
strange things they found.
treasures, but
Oh,
I'm not sure what it is.
They found a lot of secondary evidence, you know, even maybe third level evidence. It hasn't gotten to, well, I shouldn't say that quite that. You know, it's in its 10th season, so you kind of have to follow it from the beginning to understand.
Well, what I think is interesting about Oak Island is, on one level, a lot of people relate it to the Templars, but if you go back into biblical terms, there's a whole story in regard to one of the angels basically building a pit with multiple layers, that supposedly at the bottom of the pit was a triangular, either a porphyry stone or a golden like tablet that basically is the measure of the cubit on each side, with some sort of sacred cosmic writings on it in relation to the foundations of the universe. So yeah, so you got the Templar angle is one thing, but there are older stories. I want to go back to Enoch. I would have to dig, but yeah, I do remember something along those lines. So
Probably if you find that reference, I really want to see that, because I have never heard that it was built by an angel. But let me just say this, that the complexity of what's going on here, I've said from the very beginning that I do not believe a human is capable of what happened on that island. So it gets kind of weird, you know, but being on the island, I spent a lot of time on the island myself.
nice.
So you get to feel the energy currents. You know, some people are not into that stuff. It's not, for me, it's not being into it or not into it. It's the fact that either I feel it or I don't. And if I feel it, I have to try to figure out where to place that, you know? So there's a lot of like guardian kind of energy. It's actually, you guys were talking about the Watchers last night, I think, General, and it's maybe something that kind of feels like that a little bit. There's something that's being guarded.
On the episode with Derek.
Yeah, with Derek, he was excellent. Really excellent.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that one yet. I like Derek. He's got some good information.
Yeah, he is, like we were discussing before, Robert. He is elite level, Derek Gilbert.
Yeah,
I'm very lucky to have an individual with his caliber part of this community.
Now, let me say this too, guys. Robby had mentioned this porphyry stone or some kind of a golden plate or something. The reference in the Oak Island story to that is actually it's called the 90-foot stone. Basically, the money pit model is essentially a model of Solomon's temple. It has references to the degrees of Scottish Freemasonry. You know, I think it's the 3rd degree or something, if I'm not mistaken, of Enoch, Royal Arch degree or something like that. And basically, the idea is that beneath the Temple of Solomon were called the Enochian vaults or the Enochian chamber. I'm sure, obviously.
Right, exactly.
And the idea is that there were not, well, generally it's talked about as 9 platforms, and they're like evenly spaced platforms directly beneath each other. And on the 9th platform, in the Temple of Solomon, in the vault, was actually a stone, and it had the name of God on it. Essentially, you know, the Yod He Vah was actually engraved on this, the 4 letters there. And so there's a lot of references to astrology and cosmology, which I don't really think people have picked up on, apart from myself, because I have never heard it before. But when you talk about the levels, and me and Robby did a lot about this, right, Robby? Talking about the spheres and everything.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking about the spheres, you're talking about kind of how the dimensions are ordered. You're talking about how the orbits of the planets are ordered. You're also talking about the human body, how the chakra system is ordered. So when I see that, I see these
Yeah.
levels being delineated. It's showing me, okay, they know the cosmology. Which I'm not surprised about because anyone who knows the real knowledge knows the cosmology.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting when you get into the ideas of coming into formation. And yeah, it was indeed the name of God that was inscribed on that porphyry tablet or that golden tablet. I do recall when you said that it popped correct. But yeah, it is interesting as far as Oak Island and just how they've gone down. And well, and then back to the idea of we're going to talk about standing stones. Was it these cyclopean builders of the ancient times, these descendants of the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, the Anakim that were remaining on Earth, maybe, that had something to do with building this this treasure pit, or this tiered hole. Kind of reminds me of the pillars with the information as well, as far as that whole storyline.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. So in any case, I did a lot of work with the Curse of Oak Island, and 2017 and 2018. Of course, I've paid very close attention to it since 2015. And I had a chance to go on the island, present in the war room, which is where everyone, all the theorists, present their theories to the team. Everything was recorded, guys. It was the whole Hollywood outfit was there and everything. They actually never aired my segment, which was pretty big disappointment. But
yeah, very nice woman, isn't it, mate?
yeah, I did a lot of work, guys. A lot of work. So because I see and I feel that there's something there's something seriously important going on here. It's not your typical treasure hunt. You've had many groups of Freemasons involved all the way since the beginning. So what, why are they so interested in this? The other thing is, supposedly this island, which is in Nova Scotia, Canada, actually getting up on a similar latitude to where you're at, Robbie. It's
Right.
it's pretty far north there. And the thing about it is that it was supposedly the first piece of land that was actually delineated out into sale as a lot, to sell a lot or a parcel of land. Supposedly, it was the first place in Canada to do that. So that was chosen as it's an island. This is not even on the mainland.
Right.
Why would you do that? And guess what they did, guys? They divided it into 32 lots. They could have done any number, but they chose 32. We all
Right.
know it's a Freemason number, so
Sure.
they know something. They know something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, guys.
Aren't there also some sort of links as far as drawing lines between like Rennes Chateau and like all these different Templar kind of sites, and they all kind of point towards that area?
Oh yeah, it's actually. I'm glad you brought that up, Robbie, because it goes back to they found a lot of stuff relating to the Templars, relating to southern France specifically in terms of one of the artifacts they found. There's ovations to Rosslyn Chapel, of course.
Yeah.
And Freemasonry and the Rosicrucians and all this stuff. Somehow, this is the weirdest part about that. And Marty Lagina, he's one of the stars of the show, and he owns a lot of the land on the island. He says often, he's like, how is it that everything seems like it could be true? Like, how is it that every theory that comes out, it feels like, yeah, that makes sense. It feels right.
I will just say one thing here, Dave and Robert. Rennes-le-Château is a particular intriguing area.
Right.
Priory of Zion, Templars, Asmodeus.
I was going to say Asmodeus is right there, the Lord of Oil. I mean, and then you got all the genetic, and then also, Dave, are you familiar with the Newport Tower?
Yeah, actually, I've actually been there. Have you been there, Robbie?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm down that way quite frequently because of family, so I see it in passing regularly.
Yeah, there's that's another interesting one. Some people think that comes from in ancient time, as opposed to not being the Puritans or the colonists or whatever.
Right.
It's
Right.
a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I was standing in front of it and I was looking at it. I'm like, well, I was expecting it to look a little bit more refined. It looks a little crude to me.
It does look really crude. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
so
is pupil
I don't know.
intelligence? Is this, I'm not familiar with it. Is it somewhere where you are, Robbie?
Yeah, down in Newport, Rhode Island, right
Or-
pretty close to the waterfront. It's actually right kind of close to a church. Is an old tower that was it's an 8-sided tower, and they believe it was either built by the Vikings or the Templars. A lot of people tie it to some of Francis Bacon's drawings. It's an interesting site.
Yeah, they were saying. I think they were trying to. They noticed it was aligning to the cycles of Venus potentially, which is of course would be Templar related.
Right, right.
It's up on the hill. You can see the waterfront. It's a really steep hill, right, Robbie, to get from the waterfront up there.
Yeah, I mean, it slopes pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's right in a super touristy kind of area, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
What is this? Since you mentioned this, Robbie, what's this Lord of Oil? What's that about?
Oh, so Asmodeus, his title is the Lord of Oil. And if you go through different histories, like in the Vedic philosophies, they always would dump like oil over the Pitar stones. And then you look at like Roman culture, and they would actually they would cast statues hollow to be filled with oil. So it's always almost looked at as like the oil is related to like the spirit. So it's been seen as a mechanism that you could possibly bring an entity into to occupy. So some of these ancient like god statues, they would basically bring that entity into and it could occupy it because of the oil essentially. But Asmodeus is the lord of the oil, and he is at um Rosslyn Chapel, like right when you go in, he's standing there, and what's the sign say? This place is terrible, or something like that. When you walk in, where he's at.
It's something along those lines, isn't it, Robert? It's
Yeah,
almost as if it's like guarding.
right.
Is it Mary Magdalene's chapel? I
Yeah,
could be
it
wrong on that one.
Rosalind Chapel. Well,
Yeah,
but and then the other thing, if you take that back to King Solomon, there's some relation to Asmodeus and King Solomon, and I think I can't remember if it was the one, if he was the character that tricked Solomon into getting his ring. But there is, yeah, Asmodeus goes, and it's so he's in multiple non-canonical. I think even like a couple places in the Bible that is made reference to him. But yeah, he's definitely I guess he's the king of the demons,
yeah. I think he's one of the big guns, isn't he, so to speak.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's bizarre into how you think of something with such like a religious significance as like chapels, and
Yeah.
then you've got one of these like so elite level, highly evolved chaotic entities, such as Asmodeus.
Right. And these are basically these entities that have been here since the construct, as far as
Oh,
the formation of what reality is.
yeah,
So they're kind of, maybe like along the lines of like archonic forces on some level. But
exactly.
maybe even related into like the jinn or the jinn. But yeah, some ancient archonic force that's basically spiteful against mankind and
Yeah,
wishes to seek to somehow disable us, you know.
yeah. Good shout that, mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, this just so significant, and I don't believe that they're coincidences whatsoever. but the links, like Templars, all the secret societies, it's just takes it that up that level of fascination.
Right. And it's just interesting also how the Templars and this philosophy, and yeah, when you tie the Baphomet, through the Atbash cipher and relate that back to either, Muhammad or Sophia, it all gets rather, it becomes just this giant web, of interconnections.
Yeah, and no matter which way you look at it, Robert, there'll always be connections linked up, whichever way you look at it.
Right.
Yeah, and too, guys, I want to add that this oil topic is a really big topic for me. That's why I asked you about that, Robby. Because, by the way, and I don't know if people noticed this before. I'm sure it's not common information, but if you look at the word Lord,
Yep.
well, that's pretty similar to the word lard, isn't it?
Very much.
And that's actually, that's in my opinion, the reason why the word came into because it's based on the word lard.
And I've even heard it pronounced as lard.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, lard. Yeah, but the thing about it too is that we know that there was a lot of burnt offering sacrifices in the Old Testament. So, let's offer this to the Lord, and it was generally predominantly the fat of the animal that was given to the Lord, and it was a pleasing. It's like, what is this stuff? I mean,
yeah.
and people, and I'm not putting anyone down at all, but I'm just saying there's religions formed around this as like the core of your spiritual being, and you're saying, yeah, that's my tradition, and we still don't even know what the hell is going on with that.
Right.
It's a strange thing, very strange.
And the Masons, even when they dedicate a building, when they lay the cornerstone, they pour the oil and the wine and the corn, so the ties to this oil or this lord or lard, it very much ties, I think.
And you know what it is really for me too is it's really the core of alchemy, and it's actually, I'll just be quite honest, like I don't do the hidden game stuff. I just say what it is.
Right.
And the basis is in medicine. It's in Ayurvedic medicine. And I'll tell you what it's called, guys, if anyone wants to read it. The oldest intact medical text in the world is called the Sushruta Samhita. It's SUSHRUTA space SAMHITA. It's available online as a free PDF too. But the core of Ayurvedic medicine is oil. That's the whole thing about this. So when you go to the West, and I teach concepts of pre-Ayurvedic medicine, so I spend a lot of time with this. I fast all the time, fast every day, and that's why I'm able to think very clearly and at high levels, because I have clear information coming into me because the body's not been polluted by food all the time. So my belief is that when the teachings of oil got to the West, and when I say West, I mean, like the Holy Land and kind of over that way. I believe ancient India was possibly the first culture on this planet. I mean, they go back millions of years. Their cycles are millions of years long. The Yuga cycle.
Sorry, mate.
For sure.
Right. So
did you say Hindu then, mate? Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of it's pre-Hindu.
We have the Scythian ties.
Oh, is that right too? Okay.
Yeah, that when the Scythians came down, you can trace the map, and they essentially distributed themselves into India and Mesopotamia. So you had this huge link between India and Mesopotamia very early on, as far as back into the mists of prehistory. But that's just one move. I mean, I think that through the course of time, people have been moving and migrating long before we've even been able to keep track of these cycles. I mean, so yeah, what exactly, it's interesting to think how far back these things actually go.
So, Robbie, is this are the Scythians related to the Aryans at all?
Yes.
Yeah, it goes back into the air. But you got to realize back when the Aryans were inhabiting the planet, it encapsulated all of the races on the planet, you know. So it's not this idea of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed thing. It was just that was the turning of that age, and the people of that age were the Aryan, which became cognate with modern Iran, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The country of the Aryans. Yeah, that's right, Robbie. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that, well, for me, being an astrologer, I look at the word and I say, well, that's Aries. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'll tell you, in my opinion, how I know that also, not just because of the word, but because they always had the eternal flame burning, everywhere they went. Well,
Yes.
guess what, guys? Aries is a fire sign.
Yep.
So no kidding. No kidding.
And even
And
now, well, even now we see the eternal flames, you know, at like Kennedy's grave and the unknown soldier. And so, you know, it harkens back to those times of the eternal flame, you know.
and the Olympics, of course. You're totally
Oh,
right, man.
for sure. How you don't let the fire go
Yes.
out with the runners and you have to bring it. And then the 7 Vestal virgins that would light the flame. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. And actually, for me, when you talk about the 7, I've also heard a 10. I don't know if it's the same story, but basically, the chakra system, those are
Mm.
the virgins. And when you talk about the oil, guess what that's talking about?
Mm.
Your
The spinal
body.
fluid. Yeah.
Oh, you already know, Robbie. So this is good. So we're making progress, guys. This is where
Mm.
humanity needs to go.
This man doesn't know, mate. He's got
Yeah.
wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in any case, if people want to know where to find the origin of this oil concept, please just go to the Sushruta Samhita text from ancient India. It's thousands of years old, and
Yeah.
it teaches you about how to circulate the fluids of your body, how to lubricate the organs and your capillaries with the proper oil,
Nice.
how to specifically how to lubricate the pineal gland with the proper oil.
Mm.
That's the whole point of this whole illumination idea. You
Right.
have to
Right.
get your fluids refined. You have to get the proper oils in place, and that needs to be able to essentially bathe the third eye, also called the pineal gland. Then you will have that's not this is not your that's not like your hobby or your fad kind of ideas. This is the actual science behind the illumination. You need to work with oil. You have to work internally with oil. Not
Mm.
it's not pouring it on the outside of your body or pouring it on stones. I mean, I have no problem with that. But when you're talking about pouring the oil gets poured from your cerebrum. Actually, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you guys a really quick story. It's a really good one. This is the story of Santa Claus, and it's almost
Mm.
Christmas time, so it's really appropriate. Usually, when it comes up, it's not anywhere near Christmas, and I tell it anyway. But in any case, so Santa Claus, Santa is holy. That means holy.
Right.
Claus is talking about the claustrum or the claustrum of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the claustrum of the brain is where the brain fluid is actually created. So it's saying the holy claustrum, this holy material this gray matter that produces the oil for the body. And then guess what happens with that oil? It comes down the neck, which is
And
also called,
bathes.
yeah, right. And it's also called the chimney. The neck is the chimney. Look at it. Let's see what it looks like. It's the same structure. So
Mm.
Santa Claus comes down the chimney with all the gifts for the body. The gifts are the oil for the body. That's the whole point behind Santa Claus, guys. That's the one.
Mm. I like that analogy.
Oh yeah.
I've also heard that Isis and Osiris are very much a similar analogy in the birth of Horus, being that once you activate and bathe, you know, the pineal gland in the DMT, that the risen Horus is, you know, or the hawk that flies, you know,
Oh,
so high that
man.
it can't be seen from the earthly realm, you know.
Okay, so I got some. See, Robbie, we were made to talk, man. I'm so glad we finally met. This is unbelievable. Um, the anatomy, and you can do. If we could share photos, I would. But if you do a Google search, type in. I mean, I bet you if you typed in Horus brain stem, watch what comes
Oh,
up.
100%, man.
Right. You see the falcon in your brainstem in a lateral view. That's why it's saying, oh, Horus and all the falcon, because the falcon's actually in your brain. The anatomy looks identical to the falcon in the brainstem.
And when you cut the pineal gland area in half in the brain, you also see the eye of Horus there.
Well, exactly. And you're right, Robbie. The center of the brain, which is centered on the thalamus. The whole structure. See, this is interesting. I used to think that the pineal gland itself was the eye in the center of the brain, and it technically kind of is. That's where that's where it all kind of comes in. The signals and everything. But the structure of the eye of Horus, which you guys are familiar with from ancient Egypt, I'm sure everyone's seen it. Very common symbol. It's actually the pineal gland plus the pituitary gland plus the thalamus, which is actually the center of that eye in that depiction, plus the corpus callosum, which is the eyebrow above that, and then that little squiggly, well, like the vortex symbol with the concentric kind of rings that comes off the end of that symbol is actually the convolutions of the cerebellum. So that's, again, totally correct. It's totally correct. That's actually your brain as well. It's all. Everything comes down to the human body, really. Right. And if I had one thing to teach, I would not teach astrology. I would actually teach the correct human physiology and the correct anatomy and how to actually have correct medicine. Is what I would teach.
The temple of man.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
And I mean, your temples, the side of your head. That's the reason it's called the temple. It's because that is your temple.
Right.
You're talking about, guys, right?
And those are between the two pillars. It's yeah. It's funny how much when you look into Egyptian symbology, like the crozier and the two little tools there that the pharaoh holds, and you follow those, and that shows how the eyes basically link in with the brain, and it just multiple factors in regard to looking at the sculpture and comparing that to physical anatomy.
That's right. And what better way to make sure people don't forget than by putting it in your statuary and everything and engraving it in stone, so you never forget it. But in any case, the anatomy portion is it's just beyond important. It's amazing the timing. I don't know about for you guys, but the past 3 days, I have had probably the most downloads of my entire life. I don't know what is. I mean, I do know what's going on. It's in the sky, very close to the solstice. That's coming up very soon here. And on the 28th is part 3 of Pluto return for the United States, which I remind people, if they don't know this, that part 1 of Pluto return for the United States was when the war with Ukraine and Russia actually started. And it was within a day and a half. It was actually within that day, that period of time. So we're getting ready for some extremely explosive things that are on the horizon here. And, we're ready to move forward. I'm so thankful to have platforms to talk on and knowledgeable people. To be able to do it at this level, I actually think Robbie's the first person apart from Santos Bonacci, Robbie's probably the first person I can do this with. So probably number 2, Robbie. So it's just amazing.
Well, hey, it's just the love of the information and the love of what the cosmos and reality is, man. I mean, I think it's the most beautiful, overall, just it is everything that we are within what we are and how we are. It's like the what's it called, the mystery of all mysteries, as alchemists call it.
Magnum Mysterium.
I love that.
Yeah, the Magnum Mysterium. That's the word I was looking for. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, a couple of people involved with the Oak Island search, Gretchen Cornwall and John Edwards, actually are writing a book called. It has the word Magnum Mysterium in it. It's something about Oak Island, or Magnum Mysterium, the search for the Oak Island treasure, or something like that. They're actually working on that book right now. I just saw that word yesterday, Robbie.
Yep. It's weird how synchronicities flow, man.
Yeah, it is, mate. It is. Everything happens for a reason, Robert, yes.
What's that?
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
It's meant to happen.
It seems to be. You know, I mean, I try to generally just surrender to the flow and believe that the necessary things that need to be will be. And it continually surprises me. You know, I've been kind of living that way for, you know, since I was in my late teens. So, and that you know, yeah. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting too, because I think I told you this, Robbie, but see, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest right now, so I'm way over on Pacific time. I'm really far from both of you guys, actually.
Yeah.
Amazing how clear the signal is. But anyway, I was actually born in Connecticut, so me and Robbie actually have a lot more in common in terms of you're from New England too, right, Robbie?
I was actually born in Jacksonville, Arkansas, on the Little Rock Air Force Base. And I've lived, I mean, you know, north, south, east, west. By the time I moved to New England, I'd been to, I think I had 23 different residences. And then I got up here and we built a house. And this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, you got that, that Lost Crystals of Atlantis story going on there in Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very interesting, man. I spent a lot of time driving around Northwest Arkansas, and I personally didn't really feel what people claim is there. But you know, maybe I'm just not in that frequency. And I think we're all in different frequencies, and I'm thankful for that. But yeah, there's a story. Even I'm sure you've heard this, Robbie, because you know we've pretty much heard almost everything each other says anyway. But the
if not, it'll be a good thing. So.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, okay, so the story about this one is there was a group of people called the Washita Moors, and their homeland was essentially in northern Louisiana into Arkansas. I think all the way up through maybe western Arkansas there. And they claim it was a dark-skinned race of people, and they claim that they were here at the very beginning in terms of being on the American continent.
Right.
So I think the idea is that they had a similar skin tone to probably people from Africa, mainland Africa, you know, opposed to northern Africa, really dark skin. And so when the slavery thing happened in the United States, and people were calling it that, you know, I guess they thought that they were just part of the slavery component, and they said, no, guys, we've been here, we were here before essentially the Native Americans, and people are like scratching their head. Yeah, they're scratching their heads with like this idea. Well, guess what? This is one of the things I was going to bring up too, in terms of talking about the standing stones, and I would love to get into that in a couple of minutes. But I look a lot at the concept and the actual visualization of how Pangea looked, or Pangea.
Right.
And if you look at where things were connected, it's not that weird anymore, because America was connected to like the Morocco area, of Africa,
right?
And this is some of the strangest stuff of all right here. I believe they're called the Beothuk people. They're essentially an Arctic people that live in Newfoundland. I came across this idea when I was researching for Oak Island, which of course Nova Scotia is just to the southwest of Newfoundland. And if you look again, you can do a Google search. If you look at their headdresses, they look like they're from North Africa. These are the native people of Newfoundland. And they've got these North African style headdresses, and even the features look like they're from the East. So, and it's not just them. I mean, the Mi'kmaq have the Templar battle flag in reverse, you know, as the Mi'kmaq people of Nova Scotia and Maine, New Brunswick. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, we have the evidence we need. So what I'm thankful for is that, you know, and I've come up against this, obviously, with television. You know, I did really good work, and they didn't show my work on TV. You know, I was not very happy about that. But what I decided to do is I'm like, all right, if you guys aren't going to show it, then I'll just do it myself. And after a couple of years, you know, we've built up a very strong networks of people, and we have our own podcasts and everything. It's like, all right, so when the populace loses interest in, you know, like network television and stuff, which is happening more and more every day because the kids don't really care. They're on Instagram. Right. So they're going to lose their influence. And then when the kids are browsing online, they'll be like, oh, what is this cool show with General Lee and Robby and Dave and stuff. Let's check this out, when they're just hanging out in their house or something. So I think we're poised to be, the new leadership of the planet. That's what I feel very strongly, is that everyone who's losing touch, well, guys, you had your time. Now it's our time, and we're going to do things correctly, and we're going to get good information out to people.
Yeah. What I find interesting with the whole matter is, when you pay attention to the mainstream media, they are perpetuating a thought meme. They're basically trying to guide the masses to an end goal, on political, who knows if it's political, spiritual, who knows where it's at. There's so many acting forces. But the thing is, going back and reading all these ancient books, man, and seeing how things have been for hundreds of thousands of years within, at least our recorded time span, there's a completely different story that's being told. And, so when you compare and contrast, the modern memes versus what people have been thinking, just really up until the early 1900s, there's a way bigger story going on here,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's all, in my opinion, it's all controlled media, and I'm really disgusted by it. I've had enough. It's very obvious to me, and I'm really thankful for all the podcasters out there who are exposing it, because it's ridiculous. It's enough is enough. We're not doing this shit anymore. Excuse my language, but it's not gonna be okay. I'm putting my foot down. A lot of people are doing the same.
Yeah, it's the amount of podcasts now is extraordinary, and I love it. I think if anybody's got an idea of starting their own podcast, like, go for it.
Right.
Absolutely. It's the best thing I ever did anyway. I love it. Just the quality conversations we have. I mean,
right.
The episodes we've done, Robby, fucking hell, man. We've done some killer.
I don't know. I find when I go and listen to a lot of podcasts that, it'll be on a certain topic, but as you walk through it, you generally hear a lot of platitudes and people talking about their own lives. And it's like, I come for the information. I want the information. And so, I always try to bring as much information as possible to the topic, it's what I am and who I am, I think, is secondary,
Yeah, I agree, man. It's about the information.
Yeah.
I mean, Robby, you don't come much better than you, mate. You are incredible.
Thanks, man. It's just the love of the subject, man. And really just kind of dancing around in it, and kind of taking some things. It's that idea of taking everything in as true while simultaneously not believing any of it. But that comes down to gnosis. Whereas you take these applied stories, and then you have the ability for higher levels of discernment. You have the abilities to be able to check and cross-check. And you learn through gnosis, where you actually come to a point of understanding within yourself. And then that as a truism, and how that echoes and plays off of the information that you take in,
Yeah, that is just the old the outlook of everything, mate. It's like you've got a certain your approach it's different, and it's unique. That's why I love any conversation we have, Robby.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's get into the whole standing stones.
Oh yes. Dave,
ready to go. Oh, you want me to open it up? I can do it.
Yeah,
okay.
Please.
Well, the thing is that it's, like Robby is very much similar to myself here, and I'm sure generally as well, but it's a lifelong search for knowledge. And so I, as a kid, I was interested in everything. literally every topic, everything that's under the sun. I read every book I could get my hands on, because I wanted to understand. And then very early on, when people were not giving me adequate answers, I said, all right, I'm just going to go my own way. And if it's possible to figure it out, I'm going to commit my life to getting to that point. So you see things, I think some of the earliest books, of course, for me, it was all about Stonehenge in Salisbury Plain there in UK. And, it was everywhere. It still is. It's kind of like, the hallmark ancient site of UK. I think you guys would probably agree. So we've got that one, but we've also got standing stones, of course, all the way through UK and Scotland. And guess what else? And this is when it gets really interesting for me personally. I've been able to track it. Well, Ireland too, of course. So those three areas, plus it actually continues down the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, minimum Karnak stones are a huge example of that. It's like the largest stone structures and standing stone complex, I think, in the world, essentially.
And is it the Karnak stone that is the one that's kind of fallen over and broken into three pieces?
I think that's the Great Menhir, which is, oh man, where is that? Yeah, somewhere. It might be in the same region, Robbie. It might be in the same region of France up there, but that's called the Great Menhir. It's like impossibly large, even in terms of it being able to stand with its own weight and not collapse or break the ground, stuff like that. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's associated with Karnak. I could be wrong, but it is called the Great Menhir if people want to look that up. And so anyway, you go down the coast of France there, and then you get some weird. Well, actually, before you get there, because I'm kind of tracing the coast a little bit here in my mind. Before you get there, you actually get to the Basque settlement, which is a really strange story in itself. I'm sure General Lee knows some about this. It's an isolated culture. No one knows where their language came from. They've got all their own interesting things. They've got like the highest concentration, I think, of Rh negative blood in the world. Brings in that topic. No one knows where it came from.
Pardon? What was that, mate?
Well, no one knows where they came from. They don't know their origin. They don't know the origin of their language. They don't know why their blood type is so rare. It's all this weird stuff going on with that.
Doesn't that somehow link into the Portuguese people as well? As far as of the Azore Islands, and they have unique characteristics that they don't know where that came from as well either.
Yeah, actually, that's called the oh no, that's Sardinia. I'm thinking about Sardinia's got some really weird stuff too with that. But no, there's actually like a lot of stone walls and tower structures on the Azores as well. Yeah, maybe some small platform pyramids and stuff like that. And for me, it's actually part of a much larger Stone Age culture, I think I would call it. And I always, when I try to visualize it, I see two things. I see giants. That's number one.
Yep.
And number two are, for lack of a better term, small statured people, like 2 feet, 3 feet tall. I think they kind of somehow, that style. I think they somehow kind of cohabitated in a lot of the same areas. I just really feel that strongly. Yeah. There's lots of lore about that, all through the part of Europe and everything. But what I wanted to say too is that we can go back to the Azores if you guys want, because actually the topic of Atlantis is about to come up. So what's going on with this too? Now, as you continue down, you get the Basque settlement, which is between northern France. No, wait a minute. It's between France and Spain. It's between northeastern Spain and southwestern France. I think I'm correct about that. So it's this tiny little area. And by the way, it's interesting because that area, when you look at it in terms of how it's placed in terms of the ocean, to me, it looks like it's about the most sheltered area that you're going to get along that coast, because it's the furthest from, the waves and stuff. It comes to a point kind of. I think it was a Bay of Biscay, I think, generally. Is that right? Right now?
Yeah. Possibly.
Okay. So anyway, you got the Basque settlement at that juncture of modern day Spain and France. Then you continue down to the west, you get the Karnak stones, and then you come around the corner and you've got all kinds of standing stones through Portugal. Maybe they're not quite as large, but they're definitely there. And this is the most amazing part of this of all to me. It actually continues all the way down to Western Africa. Now, some of the stories I've heard of the stones in Stonehenge are that they actually came from Africa. Now, originally, what I've heard is that originally they came from Africa, then they were brought to Ireland, and then Merlin brought them through essentially magic. He levitated them onto Salisbury Plain in the UK because he was asked to do that, I think, by the king or something. So, there's a possibility that some of this standing stone culture may have actually started in Africa.
Right.
And it goes down to, I want to say about Ghana, somewhere around there. And I think that's kind of the last one. But it goes down not a little bit. It goes down a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And I already mentioned the Washita Moors, and this comes into play here too, because for me and they don't spell it the way that they don't spell it Moors. They spell it like Muurs, the Moors. And so that looks a lot like Mu or Lemuria to me.
Yeah.
And not, I think the Moors who came from the Middle East, I think they came from Lemuria and or Mu, actually. That's why they got their name Moor.
Right.
But
okay,
Robbie, I'm sorry.
Are you familiar with the Book of Invasions, Dave?
I don't, maybe, but go ahead and tell me about it.
So there's it's around 600 AD that this text actually was pulled together from multiple parts of Ireland. But basically it goes into detailing how after the fall of Babel, that this character Phineas Fairside basically went and set up a school and taught the miscellaneous division of the tongues to the different people, and then how they brought them into England and into Ireland, and there's a mention of Kali in there as well. But when you follow that line, as far as from Babylon and the building of the tower and the walls and then you take those people and you distribute them throughout the region, we can see, at least within the Irish histories, that they believe that they came from and were these ancient stone building cultures that came in and settled these lands, basically wiping out the Fomorians or the ancient Atlanteans, and bringing this Middle Eastern dolmen stone building culture throughout Europe, basically.
What does that word mean, Robbie? Fomorian? What's that about?
The Fomorians, we just did a whole show on the Fomorians. It's basically the leftover like peoples after the flood that were from most likely like Atlantis, and then as time went on, they almost like degressed. They de-evolved into almost animal like beastly kind of creatures that eventually went. There's even some mention on the coast of Ireland around 1100 that there were still some of these remaining giants that were attacking some of the monks there, and they had to set up walls to basically keep them out.
Beyond fascination, mate. Beyond fascination.
Yeah. So these Fomorians would be the Atlanteans, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something else that's very interesting. And this is what happens when you have interest in every topic under the sun. Is that and you can put stuff in. You're an intelligent person. You can synthesis is important. Be able to put it in the proper place in your mind. I think. So when you can do that, you start to get these things coming in. Well, one of the instances of this for me, it's along what we're talking about, the same storyline here. That when I was, to be completely honest, I absolutely love Irish music. I'm talking about the bagpipes. I'm talking about the
little handheld drum.
Right. The bodhran, I believe, which is the drum. You've got the Ilian pipes, which is play on the lap there. It's all these like very, very specific types of instruments, very, very connected to nature, made with reeds and stuff like that, and bladders, and you're using the natural elements and everything. Is beautiful. But anyway, for me, and I know it's highly publicized, I really, it doesn't bother me at all. But Riverdance, you guys know about Riverdance?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Riverdance, I was absolutely in love with this production when I was a kid. I was like, 8 years old. I went to see it the first time. I went back a couple of years later. I think I've seen it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to get at is that the style of music, what I feel when I listen to that, is very supernatural for me, probably more than I would say any other music form on the planet. And the dance style is so specific. Again, you don't really see that anywhere else that I've seen, except for, I would say, 3 places that I can think of right now, which is you've got, I'm talking about Irish step dance, obviously, and the derivatives is Ireland. Okay, so let's think about this. So Ireland, which is immediately on the Atlantic Ocean right there. Okay, the next one is the Basque dance. If you guys haven't seen that, it's very similar in a lot of ways. They keep the hands down. Actually, no, they don't. I think they put the hands up sometimes as well.
Now, go ahead. Finish that, and then I have a point to add.
Okay, no problem. So anyway, there's some videos on YouTube. If you guys look up Basque dance, you can see them dancing on the bluffs, right overlooking the ocean. And I'm just like, wow, I feel like this longing, like I miss this, like this was part of me, what happened to that? So that was the second part that came for me. And then the third part, and I studied Spanish for many years. I was actually going to major in it for a while in college. But the Spanish aspect of this is the flamenco dance, where again, you're using the hands and the feet in a very stylized way that's very unique. And all of this stuff is clustered. It's like clustered to the west on the Atlantic side of Europe right there. So what is going on with it? It's almost like it came from the ocean.
Yeah. So now, as far as the Irish people, when you look at the step dancing, if you go back into the Irish histories, the reason that they actually keep their hands down and don't use their hands a lot is because during the British repression, it was against the law to dance. So basically, they only used their feet, and they would, and you couldn't see them dancing behind the fence if they all kept their hands down. Yeah. But as far as when you're talking about all these cultures line up on the western coast, and then you begin to tie in Queen Scota and the red-headed pharaohs of Egypt, and you start looking at the western lands themselves, there are actually Egyptian pharaohs that are buried over into Ireland and England, and that was seen because when these peoples came, these Hyperboreans came down after the flood, and we get into that with some of the Fomerian stories, but they essentially settled the western coast there, and then there's a belief that some of these lines moved into Egypt and actually became the red-headed pharaohs, and the western lands were a reference to the western coast where the Fomorians had settled.
Right, so they actually came into Egypt from Ireland, UK area, right?
One of the group. Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a couple studies I think have been done in terms of the genetics of people from UK that's like very similar, I think, to some of the pharaohs when they did DNA analysis on them, something like this.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, man. In terms, for when I look at human history and human movement across the planet. I said eventually that I'm just going to do the best I can because, humans move across the planet readily and rapidly, and there's cultures, right? And there's cultures that mix, and then you get ideas mixing. It's really hard to know the chronology. So I like to do it by feel, kind of. It's like, where do these people, what is their like energetic signature? Where do I feel like that originated? And then I just kind of keep that on the back burner for me. But I do want to say this because I'm going to develop the story a little bit more if you guys don't mind. Okay, so we've got the coast. I kind of set up the coast there. We've got all the standing stones on the coast. We've got the specific style of dance. It's very beautiful in music. And it always felt Atlantean to me. And I can't explain why. Not as much the standing stones, but definitely the Basque culture and the Irish step dance and even the flamenco dance and all this stuff. Right. But I just felt, and I'm looking, I'm like, well, maybe it's pushed against the West Coast because it actually came from the East, which would be now is essentially ocean. But as Robby had mentioned, if you go a little further west, you've got the Azores, which has, again, a lot of really strange stone structures. I believe that fully that was part of the giant culture, probably, the Nephilim or the Raphaim culture, or maybe both. And It also was very prominent in the Mediterranean. You've got the island of Sardinia. And then actually just last night, of course, generally was talking with Derek about Mount Hermon, which is, I tend to agree. I think that's probably where the fallen angels initially came down. And then they kind of, what's that?
Mount Hermon.
Yeah, Mount Hermon, right? Mount Hermon, in Lebanon, I believe, right?
Yep. And there's actually a UN base on Mount Hermon now that they call the Hermon Hotel.
Oh.
Yep.
It's interesting, that word. Mon is essentially moon to me, and then her is, it's a female, so it's talking about some kind of a female energy. I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Female again, yeah.
So, in any case, I just want to continue this train of thought because I spend a lot of time with this topic because I love the story of Atlantis. A lot of people do. It's a very popular one. I've always believed it was real, and so the conclusion, this is a dual conclusion I've come to, and I've kind of, I'm not going to say I've put it to rest, but I don't really pursue the topic anymore because I feel really good about my conclusion, and I'm happy, always happy to entertain other people's ideas.
Oh yeah.
This is what I think actually happened with this. And again, you have to know stuff about the Americas, you have to know stuff about Africa and about Europe and about South America and all this stuff. Oh, by the way, generally, you know that island that used to be called High Brazil, right?
Do you know something, mate? Right, I was going to bring that up.
Oh yeah.
Do you know? I'm surprised we didn't bring it up when we was doing the Book of Invasions, Robert. We might have to revisit it because it is.
Yeah, I'm actually unfamiliar with this topic.
Yeah, we need to go, mate. We try and find a way.
Okay, well, the few things I know about it. First of all, it was supposed to be a disappearing island. There would be people going out, and they would see it. Then it would not be there. It would be on the sailing maps and everything. And then you go out there.
Maybe I just didn't know the name.
All right, so it's off the coast of Ireland, right? Generally to the west.
Yeah, allegedly, it's like you said. It's
okay. So for me, the association is because of that, kind of vaguely with Ireland. But the thing about this is there's a couple things. The first thing I think of is kind of like wizardry, for lack of a better word, or you could call it sorcery maybe. But there's lots of these disappearing island things going on, and even Oak Island, it's really mysterious. You got all the mist and everything, and they sometimes disappear behind mist and all this stuff. Oak Island is at a very similar latitude, to High Brazil. There was also one of the really interesting things about that is that there was also a message in a crop circle. I don't know if you know this one generally. Okay, well, it was, and I saw this on Ancient Aliens. This was on the History Channel in the United States here. And it was talking about there being, essentially it was a message. It gave the coordinates, supposedly, of High Brazil. This was someone decoded a crop circle that had a bunch of, like cipher in it or something of that nature. And it gave the coordinates, latitude, longitude of High Brazil. And it said that something about experiment, humanity, there's still time, don't give up hope, and don't, be aware of the false gifts that are given to you, something like this. And, initially I would say, okay, someone making stuff up, but I had a feeling about though. And I'm like, no, that seems like in line with what I would expect, kind of. You've got this mysterious island, it's associated with the crop circle culture, which is, I think the most in the world in the UK area. So it was a weird thing. But the other thing I thought about, I'm like, where's this name Brazil coming from? And I can't remember what I found. It's on Wikipedia if you guys look it up for the etymology. But there's another thing going on with this that's actually, to me, the more important part is that because words, I think, rarely exist in a vacuum or, on an island unto themselves. But when I mentioned Pangaea before, well, when you have the continents connected, Brazil is very close to Ireland.
Yeah,
it's not that far. So to me, all of this stuff is harkening back to when we had one landmass. And And the other part about this gets even better, is that this is probably my favorite one, maybe of all time, in terms of this Pangea idea, is that you've got the people of who are in North Africa. You've got the people of North Africa who are called they don't call themselves the Berbers. They're called the Berbers. And that's where, of course, the word barbarian comes from. And it's, a really, really derogatory term. And it's not what they call themselves. They call themselves the Amazon people.
Mm.
They don't spell it. They spell it Amazingh or something like this. But guess what? Again, that was connected to Brazil. It was connected to Brazil. So I refuse to believe that the land masses were not connected when people lived on the earth. I actually believe that it was an absolute catastrophe, cataclysm. I don't know how many people survived, but a few maybe here and there, and maybe they went in caves or something. I have no idea. But what I think about, they were connected. The cultures were. Oh, sorry, Robby.
I was gonna say, if you get there's an old line of thinking that the specific gravity of the planets changed, and essentially the planet was smaller, and that as almost like an atom changes valence, like as we circle and time progresses, like the gravity has changed, and it's allowed the planet to actually swell and grow. And as a result of that, it's also caused the inhabitants of the planet to become smaller. So it's this, yeah. But I have something to say about the floating island at some point when we get there. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no problem. This is all great. I think about that idea too. It's like you're baking a cake in the oven, and when you look at the top, if you apply enough heat and pressure, it actually will split at the top. That's like the crust splitting, moving apart, and the expansion, from the steam. You've got magma under the earth and everything, so it could be any of that stuff. But yeah, I totally see that. So anyway, and the other part about it is if you look at I'm going to call them the Amazon people, because I'll say how they call themselves. I think that's appropriate. If you look at their faces, they actually have a lot of face tattoos, and it looks like a tribe from South America. It does not look like something related to the East. So this is one of those examples of people, when it split, some people were marooned on the west side of the land masses. Some people were marooned on the east side.
And look at the Toltecs, as far as those giant Toltec heads that are down in South America, and they all have African features.
Right. I think it's the Olmec, if I'm not mistaken, Robbie. The ones.
Yeah.
That's right around La Venta, Mexico.
Right.
The Toltec are also very interesting, just north of Mexico City. They had their own thing going on there. That you start getting into. You start getting into lots of tales about Atlantis and that up that way too. They call it Aztlan, and it's like, okay, so what is all the stuff with Atlantis? So I'm gonna try to bring this together here. So what I used to believe that Atlantis was actually a very large island in the, like between, let's say, the Americas and Europe and Africa, that it took up a lot of the ocean. That's what I'm thinking, well, it's called that because it's talking about the ocean. And of course, Atlan, I believe, means water, which comes from, the Mesoamerican peoples.
Right.
So the thing about it is that I thought about it for a long time, and I was thinking about plate splitting, maybe land going down, land coming up. And I'm like, all right, I'm not sure if I'm understanding this right yet. I've thought about Greenland being the Atlantis, and it got pushed up and it froze. I've thought about Antarctica being the same thing. It got pushed down and it froze. I actually think, believe it or not, if you want to find Lemuria, I believe that's actually Atlantis. Excuse me, it's actually Antarctica. And the reason,
I think Lemuria is Antarctica as well.
Oh, okay, very good, man. So you've seen the diagrams of where Antarctica fits into the Indian Ocean, then, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think that used to be the great Great North land, which was essentially on the North Pole. And then when we had the pole reversal, it basically swung around and is now encrusted in ice.
Oh, okay, so that's interesting too, Robbie, because of course when I think about the North, I think about Hyperborea.
And Hyperborea was the Great Northland as well. So essentially, maybe the Hyperboreans were the Lemurians.
Yeah, that's totally possible, man. It's actually, I was just looking at that last week, Rob. This is remarkable. I was like, you know what? And I don't know this for a fact. I didn't really do the measurements, but I'm like, just by like glancing at it, it kind of looks like Antarctica could kind of fit in the Arctic Ocean. It would take up the entirety of the Arctic Ocean. It looks about the same size, you know?
It does, doesn't it?
I'm like, that's interesting. You know, what are we dealing with here?
Well, so now, back to the whole floating island thing, right? Are you familiar with the TV series Lost?
Yeah, I don't think I've really watched it though, but yeah.
Yeah, so this plane goes down and they end up on an island, and it ends up being some sort of like a MK Ultra trial, like testing ground. But the main guy on the island is Dr. Richard Alpert, which when you get into that is essentially Ram Dass, who used to hang out with Timothy Leary. And I find it interesting that kind of Ram Dass has like some missing years almost, and I almost feel like that story is the story of Ram Dass on the island, basically doing these experiments on psychology and time and space. But nonetheless, on the island where they're on in the series Lost is actually a disappearing island that comes and goes. And so yeah, it's interesting, this philosophy or this idea of these floating, disappearing, even you have some of the islands in the skies, that float in the skies and disappear and reappear. It's
Yeah, we've got a lot of that in the Japanese anime, right, guys? The floating islands.
Right.
The other thing too I saw in Ancient Aliens is that, and I'm very thankful for that show. I know, of course, it's a Hollywood show. It's Curse of Oak Island's also a Hollywood show, but I'm thankful for what is there, as opposed to there being a vacuum. So, I would do it differently, but I'm still very thankful. Anyway, one of the ideas that was put forward with this island idea is that it's actually a disguised UFO, essentially, or a disguised ET craft. The reason it disappears is it either goes down into the subterranean land that they live in beneath the oceans, or that it lifts off the ground and goes into the skies.
Or potentially dimensional shifts.
Say it again, Robby.
Potentially dimensional shifts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I guarantee that.
Love that. I love it.
Yeah, so anyway, there's lots, I like to keep all these things in the back of my head because you never know when you're going to need them. I don't usually put stuff in the trash can. It's always there if I need it. But I just want to pull the Atlantis story together. So I've given you guys kind of the illustration of the western coast, the eastern coast. I'm talking about the different continents.
Right.
And the thing about it is that we also know that the Appalachian chain, it actually continues through the UK. Now, the Appalachians are, they start in Georgia, United States, in the south there, and they go all the way on the ridgeline up through Maine, the last state in the United States, and then up through New Brunswick. And then it kind of ends on the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec. And then it continues in the UK. So it was actually part of the same mountain chain. Yeah, it continues in the UK generally. Yep, the Appalachian chain. So they were called the Central Pangaea Mountains, I believe. So this is like the spine of Pangaea. It's like the center ridge of mountains through Pangaea. And it actually continues up the west coast of Scandinavia too, I believe. It's all part of the same geology, supposedly. So what I think happened is that let's put the continents back together. That's the first thing I want to do. So put it back together into the original form of Pangaea there, and kind of just get a feel for where the different lands were connected and start thinking about that. I would encourage people to think about it like that way, in terms of trying to understand how cultures moved and everything. And then the part that's really going to bring it together for me is there was a documentary on actually Gaia. It's an internet television program, basically network. It's a paid subscription. It's well worth it if people are not on there. I would highly encourage it. I found a lot of stuff that I've never seen anywhere else. So one of the shows was actually talking about what's called the Reshot structure. Do you guys know what that is? The Eye of the Sahara?
No.
Okay,
maybe,
so this
but not by that name.
Okay, so this is a really big geological formation in Mauritania, Africa, which is just to the south of Morocco, to give you guys an idea of the geography. So it's on the west coast of Africa right there, but it's all desert. You know, this is the Sahara Desert.
Hmm.
So it's this big structure. It has these concentric rings. It looks like something bulged up out of the ground, and it like hardened, and it's formed these really weird concentric rings. And it's a big structure. It's a really big structure. It's like many miles across. And so geologists say, oh yeah, it's magma that can't actually doesn't have an exit point. It can't get out from the subterranean chasms of the planet, you know, and they say it's pushing up on the rock, which is totally possible, except for the fact
Right.
of when you talk about what Plato says
Talks
about
about Atlantis. Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay, so he says there's a few big things here. He says Atlantis was outside the Pillars of Hercules. We know where that is. It's
Yep.
straight at Gibraltar, right? Okay, so that's number one. People have been looking in Spain. They've been looking, on some of the islands there up the coast. But what I say, okay, let me before I say that, before I reveal this, let me also say that there's a description of there being mountains to the north. The mountains to the north are called the Atlas Mountains.
Yep.
Oh, there's Atlantis again, and of course, it's talking about the god.
And Atlas was the king of Atlantis.
He was it Poseidon? I thought, wasn't it, Robbie?
I think Atlas was the king, and he was married to what was it, Cleto, who was a mortal woman.
Okay. It might have been Poseidon that initiated the civilization. It might have been both. I'm gonna have to look back at that, man. That's really interesting. But actually, of course, Atlas's daughters are the Pleiades, which Robert Lee had brought up to me. Not Robert.
Actually,
I'm sorry,
Dave,
Robert. I combined your names. So sorry about that, guys.
yeah. We did mention that the Pleiades star system. I wondered if we'll get around to that. Hopefully,
the Pleiades. Yeah, the Pleiades are the keys to the mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so anyway, the description was that the mountains bordered Atlantis to the north, and like I said, those are called the Atlas Mountains, which the name is already showing you something about that. And then the other part about this is that the dimensions of this structure are like identical. I took it out, I did the measurement. It's like identical to the central island of Atlantis, which was described as having these concentric circles and everything.
Right.
So I actually believe that structure is actually the capital of Atlantis, and I don't say that lightly. I've thought about this for a very long time. Now,
I'd like to actually see more on that. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, man. I'll get you the link, Robbie. I'll send that link out to you so you can find the show. But there's a couple more points to this. Is that if you look at Google Earth, people have a look at this. Look at pull up Mauritania, pull up the Eye of the Sahara structure, the reshot structure. And you're going to see that off to the west, the southwest, it looks like a really large water feature. For lack of a better word, I would even say tsunami. Essentially, it basically came over the land, and then when it kind of slopes down to the ocean. So what I think happened is that the water kind of, when it filtered out back off the land, it made like a river of sand. You can see where it came back into the ocean there. And it actually leads right up to that structure. So what I'm saying, what I think happened, is that if you want to find Atlantis, it's under the Sahara Desert. It's actually not in the Atlantic Ocean. It's actually very close to modern day Europe. And we know the associations. There's so many associations with Thoth and ancient Egypt. Obviously, I'm sure you guys know about that.
Right.
The other associations are with Greece having a lot of this Atlantean flair and flavor and everything. You've got the I don't know, particularly when I think of Crete, I just have a feeling about Atlantis, particularly in that island, which you got the Minoan civilization, worshiping and everything. And there's something about like how they dressed and their colors. I'm just like, that's Atlantis. And of course, some of what people have suggested for Atlantis is actually what's today called Santorini, Greece, which is an island, and it's actually called Thera, and that there was a volcano there that collapsed, and then the water came in. Some people have suggested Atlantis. Anyway, so if you put it,
mate, did you say? Sorry, Dave.
It's called Thera. It's called Thera or Santorini, Greece. There's a caldera that formed when there was like a tidal essentially, and the volcano went off.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that in terms of trying to put that where it belongs, I fully believe that's where it is. And what better way to conceal an entire civilization than just bury it in like 500 feet of sand? Who's gonna think of that? Who's gonna come up with that? And how are you gonna get to it?
Yeah.
You dig the sand and it just goes right back into the hole. It's
Yeah.
not easy to excavate stuff like that. So
Right.
I think that's going to be coming up. I don't know when, but I think that's going to be revealed, and someone will discover something. I don't know if they're letting researchers really look at that structure, but I think it's right there. I think it's right in plain sight. It's underneath the sand.
Yeah.
And it makes sense with all the descriptions, and it fits perfectly. And that actually, it makes it so that I don't have to think about it being actually in the Atlantic Ocean. It was part of the Atlantic Ocean, until it got. Basically, what I think happened is there was a massive tidal wave. It buried everything in many hundreds of feet of sand, and then the water receded, and now you suddenly have a desert. That's how that's. And I feel the same thing, by the way, about Saudi Arabia. I think that was part of the Anunnaki settlements and stuff, and then that got obliterated, and now
Right.
people are like, "Oh, it's the desert." Well, I don't know about that. Oh, well, let's look under the sand there. Let's see what's going on.
And I mean, you almost have to think that these areas that are sand were heavily farmed, had all these factors that contributed to it becoming a desert.
Oh, definitely. Well,
So
there's a lot of stories about Egypt too, in terms of the Sphinx having the water erosion patterns. Have you seen that one, Robby?
yeah, for sure.
So people suggesting
And that would require, I think what did they say, a 68-foot consistent water flood, to establish that level.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very interesting.
So
Very interesting. Yeah. So anyway, all this stuff is absolutely fascinating. I also think I'm sure how much time we got left, guys, but in terms of the standing stones, I do want to mention that now where I grew up, and I know Robby knows at least a little bit about this because he mentioned America's Stonehenge to me, which is in Salem, New Hampshire, United States. And it's there are, in fact, in my opinion, without a doubt, lots of standing stones that have been toppled over, and I've been up there. Robby's been up there too. On their sides, some of them are maybe 10 feet, even 12 feet long. It's not in the ground anymore, but I'm looking at this thing. It's like this perfectly flat, like rectangular stone. It's got a point on the top of it. And I'm like, that's a menhir. That thing was standing. And it's huge. They're huge up there. So, through the years, you had farmers coming in. They repurposed a lot of the stones. They knocked stuff down. They used it for building materials. Equal opportunity because they found it on their land. But you go up there and there's these little chambers. They're maybe 2 feet high entrances that are just tucked into the hillside. What on earth in this supposedly this sacrifice table at the top there?
And there's supposed to be some druidic carvings in a couple places as well.
Oh, okay. On the site, Robby, or near the site?
On the site, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you've got that, man. You've got there's a lot actually through Connecticut and even Rhode Island, parts of Massachusetts and things. Vermont. I was actually if people want to see it, I'll give you my Instagram afterwards, but you can see it where I went to. It's called the Calendar One site in Vermont, USA. And I mean, if I was put there and I was looking at that, I'd be like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm probably in the UK. And then if someone told me in the United States, I'd be like, no, come on. This looks like something you find right out of Ireland or Britain.
And somewhere in Vermont, I want to say around Brattleboro, there is one of the largest Masonic obelisks in the United States. That just, like, you drive past it on one of the roads out there, but it's just huge, and it's in the middle of like a valley, and it's just like the most prominent thing you can see for miles.
Wow, I haven't heard of that, Rob. If you know what that is, please send me that picture. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I'll find out where it's at. I've driven by it several times. So,
well, to bring up the obelisk in Vermont, I did a lot of research on the Mormon Trail, actually, which is the Latter-day Saint movement. And at Joseph Smith's birth site, which is also in mid Vermont, it's in Sharon, Vermont, there's a massive obelisk.
That may be it.
Oh, thinking about, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, so that's his birth site, and it's one of the biggest in the world, I think, actually, still existing here. A fairly, you know, in early 1900s.
Just a coincidence, do you think?
What's that, generally?
Do you think it's just a coincidence, or it's one of those?
Well, I'll tell you what I think it is. I think there's some Freemason overtones, as Robby alluded to, and you know, but Freemasonry, a lot of people would say that it goes back to ancient Egypt. You know, in terms of the origin of that, I believe it used to be a very pure spiritual tradition. You know, they were teaching correct concepts and stuff. Some people maybe still be doing that. I don't really know because I'm not part of any of those groups. But there's also people call the Freemasons into question quite frequently about what their motives are, what they're doing. You know, there's some weird stuff with that stuff too.
And well, I even think that when you look at, you know, Freemasonry going back to Egypt, I think that a lot of the Egyptian stuff goes back to Atlantis.
Oh, definitely.
You know.
Yeah, they in terms of Thoth, he was supposed to be the god king of Atlantis, and he brought the records, you know, they say underneath the Sphinx. So, you know, and again, how far do you have to travel if you're in Western Africa to get to Egypt? It's not that bad.
Not that far, yeah.
So, it's just a hop over there, you know, and I think, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Atlantis was actually an island, and you know, there's a big river. I think this is, I mean, this might be in the geology, man. I think I looked at it. Can't remember completely. I think it is though. Is that there is a big river that runs underneath that part of Africa that will essentially cuts off Eastern Africa from the western part of it. So I think it actually was an island. So you know, all you would have had to do is to leave Atlantis and sail a very short distance across, you know, maybe a big river or channel or something. And then you'd be over like in Libya or something like that.
Or if it was in the middle of some sort of a giant sea, you know.
Oh, totally.
Lines, you know, where essentially those concentric circles were, you know, almost like in the Great Lakes or something, a larger sea body, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The other thing too, I want to add to this is that a lot of the models of the flat Earth. I do a lot with flat Earth. I don't focus on it, but it's a very important topic, and there's many reasons why. There's many references to it in the ancient texts. People say they didn't know what they were talking about, and what I say is I don't know about that, guys, because they were masters. Everything they did, everything.
Yeah, and I was just actually looking at a flat Earth map, probably less than 5-8 minutes ago, and when you were talking about the continents lining up, and I think you can see that more readily in some of the flat Earth maps than you can see on the globe model, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely. The perspective is a lot easier to think about for sure, man. Well, I think okay. So anyway, what I want to say about this concentric circle idea is that in some of the flat Earth maps, not all of them, but some of them actually feature ridges of land and concentric pieces of land, and then alternating bodies of channels and water and stuff like that. So some people, I've thought about this a lot, say that the entire Earth was Atlantis. That this is Atlantis. This is what the Earth is. And then supposedly the idea is in the flat Earth model, there's extra lands beyond Antarctica, you know. So that would be like the barrier, the water barrier, so to speak, you know, frozen water, but
the ice wall, yeah.
Right, exactly, the ice wall. And then past that, there's a lot of people that actually do believe there's other extraterrestrial lands out there. Some of sorry, good.
Have you seen the United Nations map that is in the UN building itself, where they actually have what appears to be the Earth model inside of the center, and then the ice, and then outside of that, there's multiple other kind of continental maps that kind of tie into that?
Oh man, well I've seen the basic one, Robby. I don't know if I've seen the version where there's ones outside of that. I'd like to see it.
Right, and this is actually at the UN, so which makes it even more interesting, you know.
Yeah, I wish we just lived in a no nonsense kind of planet, but there's a lot of weird stuff going on. In my opinion, there's a lot of nefarious stuff going on. It's very obvious to me. I don't know, about to everyone, but honestly, all I want is like I just want I want people to be able to live honorable existences. No matter what you do, no matter how you live. I just want people to be free and happy and to have a fair, equitable planet. So right now, I don't think I could define it as that. We got a lot of work to do to get to that point, but anyway, so some of the people with the flat Earth community say actually that the lands outside of the water, or you call it the ice wall, are actually where a lot of the alien species are coming from. They're actually coming across the ice wall into the center part of the plane, the flat Earth plane. I actually tend to believe that. I also believe they come from the subterranean realms, and I also believe they come from other parts of the universe. So for me, it's not one place.
It's multiple.
Yeah. Are you for Hollow Earth, Dave?
I am for. Well, the way I teach that kind of is I teach about the dimensions that are below the Earth, which is a mirror to me. And Robby did, a great show on this when he was on my podcast a few days ago. If people want to check that out on my YouTube channel. But basically, beneath the Earth, through the center of the Earth, which is the North Pole region, essentially, the idea is there's a cosmic axis, which is a pole or a staff that it's also called the world tree, goes through the very center. And above that, you have the 10 heavens, or the 10 heavenly spheres. That's how I teach it. And below that, you have the 10 hellish spheres, or the 10 hellish realms, and they're counterparts to each other. So if you were in the second heaven would be the realm of Mercury, planet Mercury.
Yeah.
If you flip that around, it's you're in the hellish version of the Mercury realm, which would be below the Earth. So the way I teach it, and the way the Hindus teach it, or the pre-Hindus in India, is actually I just did a show on this too with my friend and co-host on another podcast I do, Karen Holton. It's called Aliens and Astrology. If people want to check that out, it's actually it's flipped beneath the Earth there, and what you have are realms of increasing density the further below the Earth that you go. And one of the ways I conceive of hell is that actually I think of it more as like immobility, which means that your body is so heavy that it's essentially like you're made of stone. Now imagine having to stand in the same place for your entire life and you can't move. Maybe the only thing that can move is your eyes. And some of that stuff, I get a weird feeling about this in terms of some of the stories about people being turned to stone, and also about the really strange topic, but ventriloquism and puppetry and the story of Pinocchio and stuff like this. I think that the lower realms, you have less freedom and the body is denser and you have more rigidity. So the way it's taught in the Hindu cosmology. Oh, okay, great, Robby. So the way that it's taught in the Hindu mythology, the Vedic system of cosmology, is that there are flat planes beneath the Earth. There are alternate versions of Earth that they might even look almost identical to Earth, but they have a lot less energy. I don't really think you have color down there. I think the color ends on Earth, actually. I think it's all black and white and gray and stuff, anything below the Earth. And exactly right. And you can see this. It's all based on the torus field, essentially, how energy moves in a toroidal field. That's how you get your dimensional models and stuff like that. It looks like an hourglass, basically. And the center, guess what the center is? It's the Earth. And the word Earth has the same exact letters as the word heart, because the heart is at the center, which means the Earth is also at the center. So anyway, beneath that, you have denser and denser realms. The further down you go, I teach 10 hellish realms. I think of them, rather than a hollow Earth, I think of them as kind of a separated dimension, that it does exist in a spatial sense below the Earth, but I don't think of it as like as much as a subterranean realm. I actually think the subterranean realm actually might be limited to our version of Earth, meaning that it's part of this Earth. It's a lower gradient of this plane, and then below this plane you have another 10 denser systems, which are essentially copies of Earth. at
I
lower
do
gut.
think, yeah, I do think that there are vast cave networks within the crustal aspects of the Earth itself. But
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I think once you get, I think that it moves in layers, like you're saying.
Yeah, and the mythologies, from the native people in the Americas, I can speak to this a lot, and I've done actually a lot of research with it. And I didn't even know they talk about this on the eastern seaboard as well as in the southwest of the United States. But basically, a lot of the native tribes say that there were many sets of cataclysms that happened. Each time they were taken underground. A lot of times they say it was by the ant people,
Ant people, right? Right.
which to me are essentially aliens.
Hmm.
They're insectoid aliens, and they took them underground so that they weren't destroyed. And then when it was cleaned and everything was fixed, they brought them back up,
Right.
and they said, "Okay, here's your restored land."
Right. And I actually had a friend of mine who's a Navajo Hyoka tell me almost, you know, what you just told me, but in a bit more detail. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, man, I'd love to connect with him, Robbie, if you're still friends. Love to
Oh
talk to
yeah.
him about.
He's out west,
So
so
okay, great, yeah, I would love to have that conversation because I think I believe they're the holders of the wisdom on this continent, and I really value what they have to say. So anyway, yeah, I agree. There's subterranean tunnels, I think, across the entire Earth. I actually have thought about one of the other ways that humans can migrate is through the subterranean tunnels, and you can actually, theoretically, in my mind, you would be able to travel literally across the ocean if you're way under the if you're way under the ocean in some kind of a tunnel, man.
Yeah.
You could
yeah.
you could technically, I think, get all the way. You don't have to think about sea travel is what I'm trying to get at. You can get under there underneath the floor of the ocean.
Yeah. It's just fucking hell, man. The fascination is thick. It is thick. It's never ending. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. And in terms, I just want to say one more thing about Oak Island too. Is one of the big theories on Oak Island is that it was set up to be the new Atlantis, actually.
Hmm.
And this is directly from Francis Bacon. People are
Right.
familiar with, father of the scientific method.
Right.
Scientific method is the basis for everything I do. So I'm right. I'm 100% in agreement with how he did things, looking at the natural world, learning from the processes. So anyway, the idea I think was to set up a new system, new groups of people with a better model for success and everything. And a lot of people think that he chose Oak Island to actually be that place. And he has a book, The New Atlantis. I
Right.
would encourage people to go out and read it.
Oh,
There
it's a
was,
fun read too.
yeah, it's a great one, right, Robbie?
Yeah, definitely. I would highly encourage everyone to read The New Atlantis by Francis Bacon.
So we've got that one. I also want to give a shout out to someone else involved in the Oak Island search. His name is Randall Sullivan. He wrote his own book about Oak Island, and the conclusion I believe he came to was that it's directly related to Francis Bacon as well. And he has a lot of details and references from Bacon's work in there
Yeah.
to support that.
Now,
And
well, I was going to say, interestingly enough, about Francis Bacon, he was driven out of like popular society and culture. He was like basically during his time he was canceled, you know, as part of cancel culture, and he left the Senate in disgrace. And that's when he kind of went into hiding and started to really write about all of this stuff as far as the New Atlantis. And he was working basically almost as the hand of the queen, you know.
yeah, supposedly, and I'm going to give another shout out to one of my friends in a minute here, but supposedly he was the rightful heir to the throne of both England and France.
Yes.
And that's why he was excommunicated. It's not coming from me. It's coming from some of my friends' research.
Right.
And there's some other stuff too. I just want to give a shout out though to Jake Roberts. He's also he's really big with ciphers. He does a really great job. Ciphers is not my cup of tea. I'm not really that great at it, and I have so much on my plate just to begin with. In any case, but he does a phenomenal job, and he's actually got a YouTube channel. It's called The Ghosts of Bacon. I really highly, I couldn't, in fact, I can't highly recommend Jake enough. I'm amazed at his work, and he's he's brought a lot of really great people on board too.
Nice.
And so he believes that Oak Island also is a creation of Francis Bacon. And it's in terms of being well supported, that's an understatement. I cannot believe what this man has put together. Absolutely astonishing. So go
Right.
check that out. And the other thing he said about Bacon, which I just heard for the first time, I don't know how, this week, is that he believes that Francis Bacon was actually, he had many aliases. One of them is Shakespeare.
Right.
I actually agree with that. The other one is that he was actually the same person that was called Samuel de Champlain.
I've heard that. Yeah.
He was the same person. He was the same explorer. So basically, he supposedly faked his death, and then he went over to the Americas and then did all of the work he needed to set up the new Atlantis in that part of the world. Well, this is really, really deep topic, guys, and I'm just really appreciative that
I love it.
Now, I got a question for you, Dave. Being from the East Coast area, what do you know about Croatoa?
Man, Robbie, this just came up yesterday. Again, it just came up yesterday. Well, this is about the Jamestown colony, right?
Correct.
Okay, so there was I think it's also about Virginia Dare, if I'm not mistaken. I hope that's her name. Hope I'm getting that correct. So basically, there was a lost colony of settlers somewhere. I think it was southeast of Jamestown, Virginia, and they just disappeared. They disappeared, and the explorers couldn't find them when they came back to the Americas again after coming back from, I think, Europe. And people don't really know where they went. And I think that phrase that Robbie said was carved on a tree, I believe.
Right.
And in terms of the word origin, I think people are still puzzling on it. But what do you think? What do you think about that, Robbie?
I actually have. Let me get in here. I'll find it. I did find one translation of that, and give me just a second. I got it right. Here it comes. So, let's see. Coleridge, Robert Sutherly, the Satanic School is what a couple people have linked it to, where basically they almost believe they were sacrificed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? Oh.
So.
And that, do you know what, Robbie? That would make sense, really, wouldn't it? For like a tribe to just vanish.
Well, or if they sent them over and as a almost like an initial sacrifice to the land itself, to basically quell the land to settle it again.
Like swap shop, mate.
Yeah. But yeah, that's hard to say. That's all just speculation. So
yeah.
Well, there's this topic. It's a really big topic about the blood sacrifice. That's a show in itself.
Right.
It's
right.
Yeah.
All right, but the claim for Christianity is that Jesus was the last blood sacrifice. That he was the sacrifice for humanity, for the planet,
for all sacrifices.
Right. And in the Old Testament, before Jesus came, there was animal sacrifice to again. And they're going back to this concept of the Lord again, which for me is the lard. It's the fat of the animal. He didn't want the muscle of the animal. You guys eat that.
The blood and the fat.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does that sound like? That sounds like this whole cattle mutilation phenomenon.
Yeah.
To me, it's identical to that. There's supposedly experiencers that, being up in the ET ships, they said, oh yeah, we saw vats of like blood and fluids and body parts and stuff like that. You've got, this cattle mutilation thing, and no one can explain this. I mean,
well, all that kind of ties back into the ideas of genetic experimentation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that goes back, in my opinion, to ancient Mesopotamia.
To the Garden of Eden.
Right. Absolutely. And actually, me and Robbie just talked about that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's this question about who came down here, who's kind of altering the genetic code, why, what is this? Some of what I believe is that the Earth, it does feel like a bit of an experiment, except for the fact. And by the way, with astrology, even when you're looking at the zodiac, you can see it's called zodiac means the wheel of animals. So you can see that it's primarily animals. There's the human is Aquarius, and then you've got some principles like the Virgin, which is more principle than a human, and the twins, which is again more principle than a human. So the thing is like, well, this is interesting. So the humans featured in here, but you've also got the ox, you've got the ram, you've got the goat. There's a scorpion, and what I've thought about, the fish, which is Pisces. Yep. I'm actually a Pisces, so I know a lot about Pisces. So the thing about it is, it looks a lot to me like some kind of experiment, meaning that, and I used this example the other day on, I don't know if it was with you, Robby, or with my co-host Karen Holton, but basically the example I used was that you have a human that's born. Let's say the person's born under the sign of Taurus. Well, Taurus is the bull. Now, if you know Taurus people, they have essentially they have the mind of a bull or a cow. And I'm not saying it a derogatory way. I'm saying it the way they go about the world, the way they approach things, the amount of time they take with things, their interests. If you go out into a field and you observe a cow, you tell me that's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're not doing the same thing as that human's doing. Watch how they move. Watch how they spend time looking at things and relaxing and all this stuff. You go out into a field with cows. They're just so happy to be out there. They like to be, I've seen cows laying in beautiful fields of flowers, just relaxing. Well, if you know a Taurus, most Taurus people like flowers and they like relaxing. It's the same exact thing going on. So now if you get a bull that's born under the sign of Aquarius, which is a sign of the human, I'm going to go ahead and say that bull has the mind of a human. So when you watch that bull moving, you tell me that's not like how humans act and how they think and how they move. So there's this thing that's going with these transfers back and forth. Some of that I do believe is just freedom of creation, and it's nice to be able to experience things maybe as a different kind of entity or being, or an animal or a human or a plant or whatever. There's the idea of transmigration of the soul with that too. But the other part of it, I do feel like there is a lot of nefarious things going on this planet, without a doubt. I think a lot of it's actually dimensional, believe it or not. I think the earthly paradise has always existed here, but I believe it's at a higher gradient. And we think there's only one Earth until if you've been able to tap into some of the higher dimensions, you're like, wait a minute, I'm in the same space. I'm seeing things completely differently. I feel completely
realm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. But and I'll tell you something weird. This is a really weird thing about this. If you really pay close attention, I would go ahead and wager that if you know what to look for, you can actually see that it's an almost identical copy. When you copy a dimension in a higher gradient, it's almost indistinguishable, except there's very small differences that I've been able to notice sometimes. And the way to find that is go to the best ways to do this. Go to something that has like a really tight seal on it, like a door, or like like the hole between logs. Go somewhere like that, or like your electronic device.
And I was going to say light functions completely different on other planes.
Oh, absolutely, man. And so what I'm getting at is that if you feel like you're a person that moves through dimensions frequently, just like go up to something that, maybe your house. It's a good way to do it. Go somewhere where there's a little crack in the wall or something, and just like go over there and focus on it. See how much of the finger can kind of fit into that opening there, and to see if it looks different, or see if it feels different when you approach it and kind of interact with it. The reason I'm saying that is right, and so that one of the things that I've noticed when I have had experiences in other dimensions is that's the first thing that I key in on. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is not the same place, because I didn't do that. I didn't compress this crack here in this wall. And now when I go up to it and I'm like, wait a minute, it's a smaller crack today. And then if, you have to know what you're looking for, but when you leave that dimension, you come down to another one, you go out to the same place and you're like, how is it bigger now? like, what the hell just happened? And I'm saying it's a very minuscule amount, guys, but it's enough where if you put a piece of paper in it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Or you try to put the finger up to it, you'll see there's differences. Slight copying errors is what I call them. So
Well,
I actually.
now that leads me to thinking along the lines that what if some of these colossal stone structures and the fact that we can't even fit a piece of paper or razor blade between them were potentially built on higher planes, and then through the course of time, somehow they settled into a different realm.
Oh man, that's exactly what I actually think that I said for a long time. It's like I basically was a suggestion at first, and now it's actually my belief. I said, well, what if when it was constructed, they weren't that heavy?
Right.
Now, the way I think about this, I've done some work with theater before. I used to play. I actually played clarinet. I played clarinet since I was 10. So I played clarinet in musicals all through high school and everything. And so I've seen a lot of like props. I've been on stage, backstage, stuff like that. Well, sometimes you go out to, if you have to create something with like a patio, say, or like an ancient like stucco building or something, you've got these pieces of styrofoam, right, in the back, and people have spray painted it to look like a rock.
Right.
But when I think about the big rocks, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, okay, so we know that dimensions shift. We know about atomic structure and valences and stuff, and losing electrons, gaining electrons. So what I said is that, all right, it looks the same, but if the energetic state has switched, it doesn't have to be what we consider heavy.
Right.
It does not have to be. And I've also called into question carbon-14 dating, and I'm like, you know what? That's assuming that the decay rate is constant.
Right.
I don't think it is constant. The whole realm changes as we move through cycles of time.
And that gets into that idea I was speaking earlier of in regard to less gravity. And as things, as the gravity became more, it allowed, the shrinking of the people and the expansion of the body, kind of like the cake, like you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. And I think the way I think you used the word too earlier, Robbie, is that this idea of compression, in that, I don't know if people are, I'm sure some people, spiritual people, have keyed into this, but I've noticed a change in the quality of, I'll say the atmosphere. I'm not really sure I would say the etheric grid of the earth. That's how I would define this.
Etheric grid?
Yeah, what I mean by that generally is I'm talking about the structures that are both visible and invisible on the planet. So when you see like your table, your table in front of you, we all know that's it's matter, but the clear, the transparent air all around us is also a form of matter, which I call ether. There's density to it, and that's actually why planes, well, not for ether specifically, is with air, but that's why planes can fly, is because air has density. You just can't really see that. So what I'm saying is that think of best way to explain this. Think of like a it's not even three, it's actually 10-dimensional in terms of what I believe, but 10 plus the flip, which makes 20, plus the earth, which makes 21. That's how I teach it. But basically, I just make this simple. If you think about a cube, and let's just say this is a cube with 3 dimensions, and you put some, say it's made out of like blown glass or something like that, and you made this little figurine in the center of that cube. So
like an onion.
What's that, Robby?
Like an onion, or a glass onion, as the Beatles would say.
Yeah, absolutely. They say that.
Oh yeah, they have a song called "The Glass Onion."
Glass onion, yeah.
I'm gonna have to check this out after the show here. It's a really. Well, I mean, I've also described sometimes the Earth system as like I describe it as, what do I say? I say the Earth bubble system, which is spheres inside of spheres inside of spheres. It's like the Russian nesting dolls, or the onion idea. That's how the dimensions are organized. That's how I teach it. But in any case, just think about we can use the onion example. So, well, actually, maybe I should. Well, there's not a lot of necessarily free space in that. What I'm trying to get at here is that there is there's matter that you can see, there's matter that you cannot see. All of that matter together, the visible matter plus the invisible matter, makes like a three-dimensional grid. So if you were trying to find a point, if you're like in a room and you're trying to find a point in space, and it's like not part, the point you're looking for is like not part of your wall or part of your chair or something like that. Maybe the point you're looking for is like in the very center of the room, maybe like 4 feet up from the ground. This is what I'm talking about, is that's a locatable point, and there's matter there, and that matter is what I call ether.
Right.
And it's essentially it's not it hasn't been solidified down to a visible form of matter yet, but it's still available to create things, and that's one of the ways I believe quantum physics actually works. So I'm trying to remember the reason I even brought this up. What were we talking about with the invisible grid?
The compressed aspect of going from more etheric state to a more compressed state in the form of the Matryoshka dolls or the glass onion.
Exactly. So the way that I observed this myself before I even started to try to talk about it as a theory of sorts. I don't think it's a theory for me. It feels like it's correct. But I remember maybe around 2012. Again, this is a big shift. The Mayans said, okay, it's going to happen, and then everyone's saying it didn't happen. I'm saying it did happen. Yeah. If you're paying attention, it absolutely did happen.
Yeah, the Mayan calendar has specific aspects as far as the transit of Venus and several other astral aspects in the cosmos that point to that being the time when the shift happened.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And things for me, things actually started to get weird in 2008, and that's when I started to really learn about the spiritual world and everything, and mysticism and all these topics. And actually, my friend Santos Bonacci, he was the same year. He was 2008. Then you had, of course, 2012 come up, and then since 2012, things have gotten progressively weirder every year. And then after 2019, it got off the charts weird, at least for me.
Yeah.
So it is happening. I think what's happening is the dimensions are actually fracturing and they're splitting. There's kind of a quarantine thing happening now. Most people are not going to notice it because, again, you can copy anything into a dimension and make it seem like it has changed when in fact it's changed a lot. But what I'm getting, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say now, did you know that during the pandemic that John Hopkins, who was behind a lot of the pandemic response, was also in charge of the astral near-Earth object, basically data. And there's a lot of talk about the possibility of asteroids, and Freeman Fly gets into it quite a bit, that maybe they were like putting us into a state of shelter because of a perceived threat from the cosmos.
Very interesting, that, Robert.
Yeah.
And so when you say shelter, Robbie, what do you mean by that?
As far as putting us in places where, if a catastrophe were to happen, that we would have a better chance of survival as a species.
Okay, I got that. So in any case, when I went outside, maybe starting around 2012, I just the air felt different to me. So a lot of people have been talking about the sun too. The sun feels different.
Well, it was yellow, and it's now more white, I've noticed. And I spend massive, like in the summertime, I'm outside all the time. For the last 30 years, I'll get hotels here and there, but generally I'm in the sun, experiencing the sun. And I noticed a direct shift from a more yellow phase to a more white phase, myself.
Absolutely, man. So the entire realm is shifting and changing. But I noticed almost I don't know if, it's probably not the right term. I'm just going to use the term because it's kind of the best way I can explain it. It felt like the barometric pressure almost, it was changing at wherever I was living. And I noticed it it was over a couple months. I'm like, wait a minute, this feels weird. Something's different when I go outside now. So what that is for me is that the dimensional grid of the Earth is actually shifting.
Yeah.
And what it actually feels like is that everything is more exposed. It used to feel like things were in a lot of ways safer. And actually all the blindfolds are coming off now. The veils are being lifted. it's really messing with a lot of people. You know, it's a pretty difficult time. It's also an exciting time. But
Right.
what I think it is that there are electromagnetic properties that probably is what I'm feeling. It might not be as much the air pressure, but
Did you see the NASA where they had basically documented the collapse of the magnetosphere of the Earth?
oh,
Um,
I don't think so, Robbie. Yeah, tell me about
yeah,
that.
this must have been probably 5 to 8 years ago. It was a kind of a big issue amongst certain crowds, but the magnetosphere basically dwindled down to almost nothing at that
And
point.
what year was that? What year was that in?
I want to say around 2008, 2000, yeah, 2010 maybe.
Okay, so that
Maybe it
sounds
was after that, but yeah, it seems like maybe it was 8 to 10 years ago is what it seems like in my head.
well. It's probably related to the pole shift then, which I think we're due for. And actually, Frank Jacob, he's a really great researcher. He talks about how he thinks it's going to happen. Actually, I believe he said in April of next year.
Yep.
So you know, whatever it is, I you know, I don't know where you guys stand. I'm ready for this. Let's bring it on. Let's get this done. You know, it's exciting to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think it comes in concert with also dimensional shifts, and so things are taken care of. You know, people are going to be where they need to be at the right time in the right space. You know, I believe that. But it's a serious change, and I think I'd already mentioned. You know, we've got the winter solstice a couple weeks away,
Yeah.
and some people have actually suggested several things. Some people said actually the end of the Mayan calendar was actually winter solstice 2020, or
Yeah.
or even this one, or even 2022. But
Yeah, I would debate that.
yeah, I hear that with the Venus you're talking about. But
Yeah.
what I look with this stuff, and again, since I'm an astrologer, is that I'm looking at larger brackets of time.
Mm.
So when you talk about the ages of the Earth, you're talking about which zodiac sign we're in.
Right.
We used to be in Pisces, you know, the transition's happening into Aquarius. Well, there's a lot of question about when that either happened or it's going to happen, or you
Right.
know, already happened.
And
We don't
well,
know.
it's a determinate factor upon where the sun rises in the sign itself in the heavens.
That's correct.
On the spring equinox specifically. And from some of the star mapping that I've looked at, we're not supposed to come fully into Aquarius until like 2226 or somewhere around there, another couple hundred years.
Oh my goodness, man. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
let me give you my perspective on this. It's going to directly relate to what you just said.
okay.
So I did a show with Chris Matthew on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, and we were talking. And he's got a great show, by the way. Definitely go subscribe. Got some great guests coming in all the time, and Chris is awesome. Just a great guy, great host. So anyway, what I was talking about in that show, and it actually came to me as a download during the show. I hadn't thought about it before. I had the information available, you know, if I needed it. But this is where one of the ways, I mean, it's infinite, but this is one of the ways astrology helps to define ages and characteristics and what we're seeing and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So Aquarius is defined as the age of the machine, among other things. It's also the space age. It's the futuristic age. It's the age of man. It's all this stuff. It's also the age of artificiality, which would mean AI.
Right.
It's all this stuff at the same time.
Simulacra.
Exactly. So what I suggested was that on the show was that I think the Industrial Revolution, when that got kicked off, that was like the first machine explosion for me.
Right.
So when I look at that time bracket, what was that? The 1780s or something, guys? What was it? Somewhere in there?
Around in there.
All right. So if you do the math, it's about 220 years, right, to the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was thinking, I'm like, all right, in astrology, this is called an orb, which means it's the sphere of influence as you're transitioning between energies, energy fields, and stuff like that. So on the side coming into the age of Aquarius, it kind of for me really got kicked off in the Industrial Revolution, which is, again, about 220 years from the year 2000. So that means to me is that maybe for it to be complete, you got to give it another 220 years on the other side, which puts you right where you just said, Robbie. And I was suggesting, I think what I've been saying is 2180 for the completion, but it's like essentially the same thing.
Right around the same time, right around, yeah.
So we're in the middle of the transition, and you feel, even with astrology, you feel the orb, the influence of the orb, which means the sphere of influence around any point on the chart or in the sky. You feel it for quite a long period of time before it actually happens and after it happens. So the influence, the general influence is, it's obvious we're transitioning into Aquarius. So, but in terms of dates, they're all vitally important about when it actually happens. I don't spend time with the software looking at every day of the year. I just have so many other things. I'm trying to teach astrology properly. I have so much on my plate with that. But it is happening. It's definitely happening. The age of Pisces was the age of kind of, sensitivity, good feelings, like trying to get along with everyone. And you know what happened? It's like a lot of people turned very cold and they started staying home, even with the COVID and everything. Well, that's an attribute of Aquarius. That's not the attribute of Pisces. Pisces is the person who's trying to get everyone to get along, trying to interact with everyone, and a lot of people have become kind of reclusive as of late.
Yeah. I know I have.
Right. Yeah,
I think everybody's in that same boat, so to speak, to a level.
Yeah.
What else? There's just constant bullshit they're feeding us with. This is it's very bizarre.
Yeah, I think this is the time. People have used different words for this time. One of my friends said it's the time of the great harvest, which means that you've had a period of time to figure out who you are and where you stand. And there's going to be, what I believe is going to be certain types of spirits that actually have qualified to move on to better dimensions because of how they've lived, and how they've lived specifically in the face of adversity through the ages. Is that now you can, you've proven to the universe that you're trustworthy, and that even if you're given temptations, you don't take them. You want to do what the right thing is. And when I talk about cycles of time, that's actually how I define it. It's that you have a backdrop that's given to you, that's defined by which part of the cycle you're in, what year you're in, what country you live in, who your parents are, all this stuff. That's your backdrop. And the question is, what are you going to do with it? And if it's particularly difficult and you're still standing firm in your beliefs, you get a gold star, man. And basically what I think the universe says is you've qualified now based on your action and your heart. You've qualified to move on to a better existence on your next go around. So the harvest period, I think people are saying, you know what, this is not working for me anymore, so I'm just going to stop doing it. This church is not working for me. Okay, I'm going to stop going to this church. These people who used to be my friends, it's not working for me. Okay, we're not doing that anymore. And I think everyone's going through that in their own way. They're just defining who they are, where they stand, and suddenly, like, anything that's not that way has become utterly unacceptable to them, and they just don't want to have anything to do with it. That's how spirits, I think, organize themselves.
Now, when that happens within a person's mentality, it's a form of crystallization rather than a form of expansive acceptance. And it's interesting when we're talking about compression and expansion here as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I actually believe in giving spirits the free will to choose who they are and what they believe in. The challenging part for me, I don't, in terms of like what I'm interested in, I don't care if it's just you guys, it's fine with me. It's not. There's obviously, a small group of people that are interested in these high level topics. But the thing is that when you have to exist in the same system as people who are like, here's a good interest, like let's say the ivory tusk trade or something like that. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I have to be in the same sphere as that person. This poor animal, beautiful animal, the elephant, and it's minding its own business. It's happy. It's got its family. It has feelings, just like humans have feelings. And you're just like, oh, what kind of money can I get off of it?
Right. And then they just kill them. They kill them, cut their tusks off, and just leave the body.
Exactly.
It's
Sure.
So what I want to see I think this is actually what is in fact happening right now is there's a splitting of types of spirits, and all it is that you inherit what you are. So you're the one deciding to be that way. So if that's who you are, then and if you've been solid on that for many lifetimes, whatever. Okay, so now time is up. So now you're going to be one of the words that my co-host Karen uses is quarantine. You're going to be quarantined over here with the other types of people who think that's an acceptable action.
in that waveform vibration.
Exactly, Robbie.
Right.
And it's a very clean dimensional shift. Most people wouldn't even be aware that it was happening, I would wager. And then that way you can have the people who are ready to be able to progress through society and to actually make like big discoveries and big changes. I mean, Oak Island, it's just amazing. I really have to look at what's happening in the sky right now because, like I said, the past few days for me has been absolutely spectacular. I've gotten information I didn't even think was available to get, and it was given to me in the past few days, specifically about Oak Island. And there's a lot of people who have said through the years, and even after, of course, my segment was not featured on the show. Dave, why are you still doing this? It's like, guys, you really don't understand what I see. You don't understand what I see, what I feel, and having said that, what I felt when I was on the island, the levels of spirituality that I'm integrating as the story unfolds and everything. That's one of those things, guys. It's like I just encourage people to if it's not your cup of tea, then stay in your own wheelhouse. Don't go trying to mess with people. We do things we do for a reason, and we're going to get our reward or our punishment because of that. The only time that I interfere is if someone's going to physically harm another human, specifically without reason, then I will definitely interfere with that because that's a breaking cosmic law, man. I mean, that's against cosmic law. But apart from that, if people don't have interest in watching the show, or they're like, Dave, just hang up that topic. It's like, nope, not going to happen, man. And
But
actually,
that's the thing. Most people don't see the intricate interrelationship of the web and how when one part, vibrates, the whole web resonates.
That's right, man. And you're getting feedback, and then you're also sending out feedback to other people. That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say is that, and for people who do watch the show, I'm going to start doing a lot more on the Oak Island topic on my YouTube channel because it just, my opinion, it just entered a new level of importance. And in some of the information that I've discovered lately, thanks actually again to Jake Roberts, Ghost of Bacon podcast on YouTube. Go over, support him, guys. He's indispensable to this story. I am so appreciative for him. I'm also very appreciative for everyone else who's come before us. This has been since 1795. It's a huge treasure hunt, the longest in history. There's a reason why this is going on. So what I want to say, I'm going to put this out there now, and I'm glad this is going to be on a recording, is that I actually believe, and again, I said we're in the 10th season of the show right now. I actually believe that the Lagina brothers just found the original money pit, and it's what everyone's been looking for. The last time people claim that they knew where it was I think in the early 1900s, maybe around the year 1900 or 1910 or something like that. And then everyone after that has been trying to locate it again. If you can't locate that, then you can't locate the rest of the story that unfolded based on where things were positioned in relation to the money pit. There's the story of the flood tunnels and other shafts that searchers dug and all this stuff. So I fully believe they actually just found it. It's called the Garden Shaft currently. The Garden Shaft was discovered, I think, in 2018. The Garden Shaft, right, which is also very symbolic in terms of the wording. A lot of people maybe aren't connecting that, but I have for sure. The thing about it is that they kind of set it aside. They did some initial excavation near the top. They tested some of the wood from the structure. I think it came back to this early 1700s, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So, which was before, but carbon dating is not always reliable. That's the other part. But what I want to say about it is that again, it's all it all goes back to the numbers. So something popped up on the station. It was basically that the garden shaft was found to be 77.5 feet deep. And I'm looking at, you have to know about the model of the money pit too. There were minimum of 9 platforms. They were each 10 feet apart. But I'm looking at 77. And first of all, the number 7 or 77 is very significant, in the esoteric realm, for many, many reasons. But when I'm seeing, they're like, oh yeah, we measured it at 77.5. I'm saying, you know what? Are you sure it wasn't 77.7? Because I bet you it was.
Right.
I bet you it was, because that's, what happens when you get one of those weird numbers, you round it down and you round it up.
Yeah.
So, and to my knowledge, no one has brought this up yet. So this is absolutely brand new, breaking information, and just aired last week, this particular episode. So I'm following it exceptionally closely. I've looked at Jake Roberts' work, again, from Ghost to Bacon, and it actually directly, not even a tiny bit off, reinforces everything that I independently discovered in a completely different fashion. Now, what he did, he found, this gets more and more interesting, guys. He found, it's amazing, because we're going back to, a lot of this stuff is actually going back to England. So I'm really honored to be able to talk about it with people who might be hearing this for the first time in England and the UK. Nice. So the thing about it is that the way Jake came about this was actually through the 1612, either 16 or 11, and I apologize, 1611 or 1612 King James Bible. There are lots of pictures included with this. There's diagrams, and it turns out that it's all in cipher. And again, I'm not a cipher guy, but I'm, especially at this point, I am deeply appreciative for the work that good ciphers do, because I actually believe it now. I believe it is completely in cipher, and a lot of things have been in cipher. So he found the lines of latitude and longitude in cipher in the King James Bible for Oak Island. And to me, it's very obvious, actually. It's not something. Oh yeah, of Oak Island.
It's crazy, that, isn't it? You think?
Yep. So it's in there, and he had to draw lines on the page, and find points of latitude, longitude, and everything. And it even has the seconds, in terms of this degrees, minutes, and seconds. It's got the seconds on there too. And the point that he came out, and I looked at all of his work, guys. I mean, I'm a scientist. I cross-checked. I watched it at least 2 times. I'm like, am I sure that I think he's right on the mark with this? And it's totally correct. This is not the only way. This is not the only piece of evidence that is suggesting this. So he was able to put he put a thumbtack on Google Earth, and it's right over the garden shaft.
Boom.
Which, the most amazing part about this is that he did this work. This is unbelievable, guys. He did this work before the current season actually premiered. So he was like many months before anyone even knew that they were going to be excavating the garden shaft this season. But he was already, I think in the ether, he was already pulling from this, that this is what we need to focus on.
Right.
So, it's all, the first time I've said this publicly, it is related to bacon. Absolutely, without a doubt. I've never felt comfortable saying that before. I fully believe that now. Mm-hmm. Oak Island is directly related to Francis Bacon. Bacon was he was related to many of the secret societies, Freemasons and Rosicrucians.
He wrote a lot of the early Rosicrucian literature as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so this is all really coming together, guys. And there's a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to reveal publicly at this time that is in supporting evidence.
Dave, come on.
Well, I'll put it this way: the Knights Templar, we know, if you've watched a show, they're featured heavily in the theory of Oak Island. I would also absolutely agree that they're involved. They were fully involved with this. I don't know if it happened in stages. I'm not really, I think we'll find out as the discoveries are made. But This is related to all the secret societies. It's related to Jerusalem. It's related to Solomon's Temple. And it's related to Francis Bacon. It's a very long lineage of, I think, information. And Jake has said that he actually believes Francis Bacon is in fact interred on the island in a crypt, very far beneath the surface. In addition, this part's coming from Jake, and I actually do agree with him at this point after what I saw with his presentation. And so what it was is that he said that in addition to Francis Bacon being buried there, there's also Francis's birth records, and a fair amount of gold and silver and other religious artifacts. I believe also the first folio manuscript of Shakespeare is included with this. So it's going to be a massive, earth-shaking discovery. And I am. I used to be. I've been told this often in my life, Dave. Just be patient. I just want to see things happen now. But it's not. It's not on my time scale. So since this past week, again, it's just been this past week that I saw this episode that Jake did. I am very solid in what I believe. I was smiling all day yesterday, and now what I can do is I can just sit back and watch what they discovered this season, just watch it unfold. And I'm gonna continue doing episodes talking about what they're discovering as the weeks go on here. What's that?
Dave, sorry to interrupt. Have you listened to my episodes on Questus?
This is Sean Williamson's book, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you'll find it particularly interesting, especially Knights Templars, Sean's work, and Team Templars North America. Extraordinary.
Okay, I'm going to check that out tonight. I really appreciate that. I also want to mention, I think I mentioned it to you, General, that I'm friends with Wayne Murphy.
Yes, Wayne.
We've been talking for about a year and a half now. And I actually had Wayne on my show, Aliens and Astrology with Karen Holton. That's also on my YouTube page.
Brilliant. I'll check it out, mate, definitely.
Yeah, so I'm following that story very closely, and the idea is that Wayne Murphy found he's a Mohican tribal elder in Wisconsin, USA. He's found what he believes to be a Templar site on the native land there, and so they're developing. I think they got a mini series coming out, right? Generally about the site.
Yes, I think you'll. I've got one more episode to release on the quest. I think it's part 4 or part 5. I'll explain a little bit more. I don't want to piss on anybody's chips, so to speak.
Yeah,
but very interesting. Anything Knights Templar related is it's extraordinary. It is incredible.
What I feel, guys, is that we're coming up on the big revelations that we've all been waiting for a long, long time. It's ripe for the picking. I mean, it's ready. We've got a lot of people who are able to do it and know how to proceed, I think, properly. And so I'm really encouraged to see people like Wayne and Sean, really upstanding guys, to be in charge of such big discoveries. Even the Lagina brothers, really nice, with Oak Island, really nice guys. Of course, I met both of them. I've talked with Rick quite a bit, actually, and it just feels good to have it be in good hands. For once, they're people that you like, as opposed to like some kind of a society or something.
Yeah, these they're not the alternative agenda. They are genuine, respectable, fascinating individuals that we are very lucky to have them in this community.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. There's also there's a lot of great people out of the UK. I would love to come see you guys. It would just be like Christmas morning for me to be standing in Avebury and Stonehenge and all these places, So
right.
maybe one of these days soon. Get out there, feel the energy, see what's going on.
For sure, mate. It will be mint, that.
So,
as fascinated I am with this conversation. I mean, are we good to wrap it up now, do you think? Or we can always part to it.
Oh yeah, whatever you guys want to do, or if you want to, I can go a little more if you want. You can split it into 2 parts. It's totally up to you guys. I don't know how much time you got.
Oh well,
Yeah, I've got a couple things I've got to get done around here, so
don't wait.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk forever. I love this
Well,
conversation.
and I think what this really comes down to is when you start really digging and delving into all these topics, that it's real. Like I've said it numerous times. It's one system. When you really get into it all, and you really start to see how it all just laces together, and so part 1, part 2, it's all just a part.
Yes, it is as one, mate. Yeah, agreed. But
Yeah.
Dave, mate, incredible
Good stuff, huh?
Yeah. I love it. I've got the dash mercs here, Robby.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a true honor, Dave. But before you go, would you like to let everybody know where they can get hold of you, please, mate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you guys want to see my work and or contact me, hopefully both, if you have interest, I would say Facebook is probably number 1. That's where I spend the most time. So, on Facebook, I'm under Dave Petrella. That's Petrella. It's going to be very easy to find me. You'll see all the esoteric related topics and content. And the other one would be Instagram, which I'm under Dave Petrella 12. Again, Petrella 12. And then, of course, I have my YouTube channel, which also has my email on it in the About section if you'd like to send me an email. And I've got lots of content on there. I've got shows that go back to 2021. I just kind of got started with podcasting in 2021. So, I'm still kind of at the beginning, but it's amazing how quickly it's developed. So I've got lots of interviews with different people on there. I post everything that I possibly can in terms of audio and video I do for shows and everything on my YouTube page. So that will always be the best place to go for that kind of content. And I have a show that I do twice a month with my co-host and friend Karen Holton. Karen actually is based out of Alberta, Canada. So again, it's so brilliant to just draw everyone together. I feel very blessed and honored to be able to do that. So Karen lives in Canada, and we've been doing a show called Aliens and Astrology. It's on her YouTube channel. It's on a lot of different platforms. I know it's on Spreaker and I think Spotify and all these. It's listed at the top if you go to pull up some of the YouTube videos. So me and Karen have been doing that for about 6 months, and we're about to start our 2nd season in January. And what we do is we talk about really anything esoteric. And Karen has a lot of experience with with extraterrestrial, let's say, encounters and being able to interact with them in positive ways. She's spent time on ET ships through what I would call altered state of consciousness during the nighttime when mostly people would call it sleeping, but it was very different in her experience. So she's very to me she's like a ET ambassador. She's the perfect person to do that. She's very welcoming of all types of people, and she's really tuned in, guys. Karen's awesome. So she has that part of it. She does a lot with holistic wellness too and healing. So I definitely say check that out. She's got a YouTube channel too, her own channel. So we've got So we've got that. So the first show of every month we pick a topic. It's really any topic at all, whatever we want to talk about. I just did one on astrology and the body yesterday, which I'm going to be posting later today. And the second show of the month that we do is we actually have a guest on. And we've been having, just some great guests. So, of course, we had Wayne Murphy for our first guest. Second guest was my friend Aurora Seraphine. She's a natural healer. She's also very, very tuned in. I met her at a conference in Nashville for actually William Henry, the star of the Ancient Alien show. Me and William had a chance to sit down for a couple hours and talk while I was there. So that was absolutely excellent. So we had her on last month. And then this month, guys, is actually my friend Alessandra Nadudvari, and she is one of the Oak Island community, the members of the community there. So she was on season 4, episode 1, actually. And again, we're at episode 10. So this was about 6 years ago. She has a site at New Ross, Nova Scotia. She believes it's a Templar site, the site of a former Templar castle. It's a very interesting topic in itself. So she's going to be on our show in a couple weeks, actually, and we'll be talking about Oak Island. I'll probably try to draw in New Ross a little bit too, because it's a very good topic. Totally Templar related. All of it's really Templar related, to be honest. So anyway, that's the show. I co-host that with Karen. And then actually, I'm so happy and honored that Robby was the first guest for my podcast that I just started.
Yeah,
thanks, Robby. I heard Robby on your show, General, and I've said this many times. I was actually very impressed, and I said I want to talk to Robby. I want to meet Robby. Get connected, start the conversation. So I had a thought. I'm like, well, I want to talk to Robby now. So I know how to record, a video on my phone. So we got into Skype and we got that recorded. I got it uploaded. I got some of Robby's artwork on there so people can support him. It's really great art. So I started my own podcast series, and I'm going to be basically just having people on, whenever topics come up, and people who I like and respect, and people I want to talk to. And I want it to be a model for people. So you can see that, anyone who's a decent human being, I'm happy to invite them in and tell me your story. Share your life story with me, share what you believe. And even if it's not the same, even if it's not remotely similar, but they're a decent person and they're respectful of other people's stances, then I fully embrace that person. I want it to be a platform where people feel comfortable and welcome, So I've got that podcast. Yeah, I've got that podcast plus the aliens and astrology. I've got it organized on my playlists there, so feel free to browse through that. And any of these ways, contact me through email on my YouTube about section, or Instagram, again, Dave Petrella 12, or Facebook, which is just my name. It's easy to find. You guys won't have a problem.
Yeah, nice one, mate. And yourself, Robby?
I'm on Instagram. If you just Google R Marx, MARX artist, I'm out there everywhere. And then also I want to promote the Meta Mindcast, METTA Mindcast. And basically I'm just going to be releasing interviews. And after this one that just came out on the Nimrod series, I'm going to start dropping the recordings I did. So I got one of those coming up, I think, here on this next Tuesday. So, but yeah, I'm out there, and I'm easy to get a hold of. So yeah.
Nice.
Let me add one more thing, guys. I'm sorry. If people don't know some of the other things I do, of course, I am an astrologer. And so I do birth charts. I do relationship matching, business applications for basically anything Western astrology. If you guys want to get into that, I'm happy to do that for you. I also do spiritual guidance, and I teach Principles of Pre-Ayurvedic Medicine, which is fasting, circulating your oils, natural health tips. So I do offer services if you guys are interested in that. Definitely send me a message.
Yeah, okay. No problem, mate. Nice one. Well, gentlemen, it has been a true honour. And I tell you what, I cannot wait till we speak again soon. Soon, please.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, this is like the dream team, guys. This is we can actually make significant progress in understanding with a conversation like this. So I give a lot of time to this. So anytime you guys want to do it, you just send me a message for sure. I'll hop on with you.
Thank you. Right, gentlemen. Sure. I'm gonna stop recording now.